from the Chamber of Deputies. Welcome, Deputy Sergio Gutiérrez. Here with us today also, Mr. José Jaime Maussan Flota, journalist and director in Tercer Milenio. Welcome and thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Maussan. Ryan Graves, retired director of the United States Navy. Thank you so much, Director. Here with us is Robert Salas, retired Lieutenant, United States Air Force. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Salas. Yoshiharu Asakawa, Honorable Congressman of the House of Representatives of Japan. Thank you very much and welcome to this Chamber of Deputies. Here is also Julio Darwish, cabin pilot, founder of the Association of Observers of Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena of Pilots, Aviators, and Air Controllers of Mexico. Thank you so much and welcome. This afternoon is also with us Ronnie Tadeu Bernet Braga, electronic engineer and federal official in Electrobras and investigator of the Brazilian Center of Physical Investigations. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Bernet. Here's with us Enrique Jaime Colbeck Vergara, air traffic controller. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Colbeck. Likewise, Mr. Michel Baena from IPAN Unit for Special Studies, National Center, Studies on the Understanding of Unidentified Anomalous Aerospace Phenomena. Thank you very much and welcome. We also have in the room to Master Mariano Tello Nocetti, Director of the INAI Society Attention Center. Thank you so much and welcome. We also want to salute and thank to the deputies present here today, of the rest of the speakers who accompany us throughout this afternoon and will present their presentations. Also, from the people who accompany us this day, as well as those who are following this presentation through different media. To welcome us to this public hearing, which brings us together today, we will listen to the words of Deputy Sergio Gutiérrez Luna. Please, Deputy, the microphone is yours to speak. Good afternoon. Welcome to those who are with us today. From such remote places like Japan, Argentina, Brazil, the United States of America, Peru, of course, Mexico. The Chamber of Deputies is the house of the people. All opinions are heard. All people are heard. For quite a long time here, Mr. Jaime Maussan, a recognized journalist and investigator, approached to us to explain to us about the transcendence of the phenomena he's been investigating for so long. And also to tell us that in other countries, such as the U.S. governments, the White House, the Congress, the Pentagon, have had some events that lead to the idea of really mentioning to this phenomena of anomalous objects. Due to this, we decided to open up today this public hearing for everyone, where opinions will be heard, where we will talk about elements, evidence that have awakened a great interest in the public. Today, people interested in listening everything the speakers have to tell us are here. Some of them are outside, some others could not access. Regretfully, we have limited access, but we'll be watching it live. What do I tell everybody? In the Chamber of Deputies, respect always remains to opinions and ideas that everybody have. We respect you, your opinions, and we want to listen to you with that openness and plurality given here. Jaime, you are an outstanding and recognized Mexican by many people that have investigated this phenomena for so long. And as such, we welcome you here. Thank you for making this event possible. For all interested in the issue, welcome everyone. This is Cornerstone, meaning that for the first time, a public instance in Mexico, the Chamber of Deputies makes a public audience to listen firsthand to those who have had these kind of experiences, to those who have dedicated to the research of this issue, and also politicians from other places like the congressman from Japan who joins us today. He has come from Japan. Let's give him a round of applause. No further preamble, I give the word to Mr. Jaime Maussan, who will also help us conducting and directing this event today. Congratulations. Welcome, everyone. Jaime Maussan is asking me to will make a symbolic request. We will listen to the opinions that everyone has to give, the opinions, the evidences, the personal experiences, and Jaime emphasizes me of how important it would be for so many people, asking all of you to manifest yourselves, swearing, if you can all stand up, if you can all swear to tell the truth in this instance of this law power. Do you promise to tell the truth about everything that is heard in here, in this instance of the law power? Go ahead. Thank you very much to Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna for this opening. Without a doubt, a historic event which will be remembered for the times to come in Mexico. This is the beginning of a cornerstone in history. On July 26, 2023, the world, stunned, heard the testimony of three armed forces officials from the United States. David Grosh, David Fravor, and Ryan Graves, who is here in this room. They revealed the world their experiences with technologies that exceeded considerably that of their fighters. Technology which was considered non-existent in this planet. While David Grosh went even further and revealed that the United States possesses aircrafts and biological remains of non-human origin. United States congressmen insisted over and over that the American people have the right to know the truth. Up to this day, the Pentagon has not allowed the investigations to go deeper and actually wants to cancel any possibility that new public hearings to become a reality in the U.S. Congress. That very same afternoon, in a press conference, the White House admitted that the number of reports have increased about the presence of unidentified anomalous phenomena over military bases and in places where military exercises are made. On July 27th, a signed act was published by both parties called Controlled Declassification Act, where it is established that by 2024, the public would have to be prepared to accept the presence of non-human entities in our world. According to this Controlled Declassification Act, it will be considered as non-human intelligence, and quote, any being non-human, intelligent, and sensitive, life form independently from nature or origin that can be responsible of unidentified anomalous phenomena or which federal government of the United States has knowledge of. The term anomalous, unidentified, according to the Controlled Declassification Act, which will be signed by President Joe Biden and will begin operations starting in 2024, end quote, It means any object that operates or is considered capable of operations in outer space, the atmosphere, the oceanic surface, or underwater. This act also establishes the creation of citizen committees, which will be named by the President and will take care of the investigations according to the unidentified anomalous phenomena. In a statement from the Capitol in the United States through Chuck Schumer, head of the Senate, it establishes that public has the right to learn about unknown origin technology, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. It is important to consider that this act and the public hearings made in the U.S. Congress have had bipartisan support, meaning we are in front of a subject that joins us. It does not separate us. In Mexico, this issue must not be considered an issue that belongs to a party. It is a humanity issue. An issue that is supposed to join us, not splitting us. In Mexico, on March 5, 2004, a C-26A airplane from the Mexican Air Force, using a FLIR infrared camera, which at the time was Army exclusive, could log on the picture of 11 unidentified anomalous objects. This video was the first of its kind released by the Air Force from a country. It was delivered to me by Secretary of Defense Ricardo Clemente Vega Garcia. The anomalous objects were not visible on plain sight, only through the camera. This was the first time an event was registered on invisible objects on sight. The plane was 160 kilometers offshore. Let's remember this.
Arribita de nosotros está.
Así es.
A las 7, a la misma altura.
Hay unas nubes, ahí se debe de ver. Tiene como a las 7, 8 de la posición. Lo raro es que trae una punta adelante. Un puntito adelante. Ah, cabrón. ¿No está? Acaba otro.
A ver, ¿qué tenemos?
Nada, señor. A ver, permítame, déjale busco.
¿Y nosotros?
Comandante, ¿qué es eso?
¿Qué distancia más o menos lo tenías, Telles?
Oye, a ver, abusado, eso es como...
Ahí van más. Van más, siguen más atrás. Son 10, 11 objetos.
¿Abajo o arriba o arriba?
En medio, ahí van
a ir 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... Ay, güey, no, son 8.
Qué barbaridad, ¿eh?
Ahí se van a ver bien, pues. Y van a una velocidad, pero... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
Síguelo, no lo cierras.
¿Están a la misma altura, Telles?
Afirmativo.
Poquito, arriba.
8, 9, 10, 11, contando toda la cola. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11.
Ok, no sabemos qué estamos viendo, son unos objetos nada más luminosos que vienen a la misma altura que nosotros, pero no podemos saber qué distancia. Jóvenes...
No estamos solos.
¿Qué? No estamos solos, de veras. ¿Qué cosa tan rara,
CENEAM, which is the Service to the Navigation of the Mexican Airspace, declared this September 7th that luminous objects that periodically present in front of Mexican shores at Rosarito, Tijuana, and San Diego in the United States are not flares, nor airplanes or drones, or anything that can be identified. Meaning, this is about the unidentified anomalous phenomena. Recognizing this way the reality of this phenomena, frequently presented in Mexico and other countries, as proven in countless video evidences generated through different witnesses. This phenomena occurs regularly twice or 3 times a year. People are expecting it. There's no explanation. There are no drones, nor flares, or anything known. Usually after this event ends, security airplanes from the United States arrive and fly over. We have here an object taken with a telescope in which its core can be seen and the energy it produces around it. It's transcendent to recognize this phenomena in Mexico, to turn our country into one of the first in the world to accept the presence of the non-human in our planet. It's unavoidable. Sooner or later, we'll have to do it. Here's the opportunity to make an amendment to Mexican Airspace Act to recognize the unidentified anomalous phenomena. Our universe has trillions of galaxies. According to the latest astronomical calculations, each galaxy has 100 billion stars average. Each star has at least one planet average. That's why it's been considered that our universe could be made, listen to this, by 100 sextillion planets. It's a number that's hard to understand. Nevertheless, the possibilities of the existence of life, even intelligent, are indisputable. Nevertheless, it's hard to accept for science that intelligent life can move from one world to another, because distances are so long. They are at least for us. We don't know if other intelligences have managed to find other paths. If having done it, they would open for mankind the opportunity to find those paths to arrive in the future to other worlds. The future for our children could be extraordinary if we have the courage to admit we're being visited by non-human intelligences coming to Earth from the depths of the universe. Winds of change are blowing. Mankind finds itself before a cornerstone in history. To recognize the existence of other non-human intelligences in our world, binding ourselves into the concert of an intelligent universe, or continuing in a dangerous isolation that could lead us towards a real crisis into our civilization. The choice is in our hands. Exploration and discovery have always pushed progress and the evolution of mankind. Now, with the possibility of interacting and learning of other ways of life, we can expand our scopes, widen our knowledge, and find solutions to challenges faced by mankind. We are not alone in this vast universe, and by embracing this reality, we may move forward towards a destiny that will lead us until the depths of cosmos. Thank you very much.
No, it's according to the, it's Avi Loeb, the next? Yes? Okay.
We now have Avi Loeb, Masters in Astrophysics, Head of the Department of Astronomy in Harvard University, who will give us a message from his place at the university in the city of Boston. Go ahead. Please, Avi.
Thank you so much. It is a great privilege to join you on this historic event. And I wanted to make two comments before I start and show some slides. First, it is arrogant of us to think that we are alone. And second, anything that came from far away does not adhere to national borders. They probably started the journey long before humans arrived on Earth. And therefore, it should be knowledge shared by all humans on Earth, scientific knowledge. So speaking about science, let me share some slides with you just to give you the scope of a project that we have at Harvard University called the Galileo Project. We have a team of scientists engaged in studying the possibility of technological objects that were not produced by humans near Earth. And we are doing it the scientific method. So we already have an observatory that is looking for unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Bueno, estamos buscando por fenómenos anormales. Y todo basado en testigos presenciales que estuvieron en tiempo y lugar y que están viendo al cielo todo el tiempo. con un conjunto de instrumentos
It's analyzed
y
by machine
con todo lo que ellos están viendo, están analizando, y con el software de las máquinas lo que están viendo son los componentes del observatorio que están trabajando actualmente en la Universidad de Harvard.
cameras that cover the entire sky all the time. We are looking in the optical band, also in the radio band, and we
dentro de la banda óptica y de la banda de radio. Y también tenemos un micrófono acústico para escuchar al cielo. Y también
so that it helps us interpret what we see. And all of that is now working and collecting data, and we are planning to
y recolectando datos, y estamos planeando hacer copias de este observatorio en muchos lugares. Esto entra al corazón de la ciencia.
Reported by military personnel, intelligence personnel, and study this as part
por las personas de inteligencia militar, y que están dentro de la naturaleza de estos hechos, cómo responder a ellos. En mi interés como astrónomo, identificar un objeto volador como el telescopio Hawái en octubre 17, hace 6 años, este objeto fue el primero en ser reportado en de afuera del sistema solar. Entonces los astrónomos hemos estado observando objetos que vienen de afuera de nuestro sistema solar. El primer objeto reportado se llamó Oumuamua, que significa en el idioma hawaiano eso es básicamente plano, basado en la reflexión, en la refracción del sol. Es el mejor modelo que tenemos, es como si fuera un panqué. Y fue arrojado del sol por una fuerza misteriosa, sin evaporación, sin polvo o gas. Es un objeto muy delgado, impulsado por luz del sol, y para nosotros es imposible imaginar un objeto que puede navegar de esta manera. Desde entonces hemos descubierto otros objetos que fue detectado por los satélites del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, y eso fue un objeto de 1,5 metros que chocó con la Tierra en 2014 y explotó en la atmósfera a la altura del Océano Pacífico. Nos dimos cuenta que se movía muy rápido, inclusive afuera del sistema solar se movía el 95% de velocidad más rápido que el resto de las estrellas, y era también de un material sumamente fuerte, porque también tenía todo para ingresar a la atmósfera de la Tierra. Estamos hablando de otras civilizaciones, porque si imaginamos algo que pueda viajar por el sistema solar y puede chocar con un planeta como la Tierra, es un meteoro de un material inusual y de velocidad inusual. En junio del 23 vemos que hay objetos llamaradas que emergieron de la bola como resultado del ingreso a la atmósfera. Muestra que este objeto todos los que fueron recolectados por la NASA en la última década, o era un meteorito de hielo, entonces fuimos a una expedición en junio de este año. Verán el equipo de 28 personas en la cubierta del barco Silver, y utilizamos los magnetos al lado del barco para recolectar todos los objetos metálicos que hubiese a 2 kilómetros de profundidad en el Océano Pacífico. Aquí pueden ver fotografías del trineo que utilizamos. Impresionantemente, después de haber ido 26 veces arriba bajo la región del meteoro, pues pudimos recolectar 700 canicas de metálicas de cuando este objeto estuvo expuesto al fuego que lo rodeó, por la fricción con el aire del planeta. Verán cómo estas pepitas metálicas, verán que es del tamaño como de 1 milímetro. Esto fueron múltiples de ellas que cayeron al suelo marino derivado de la explosión. Y estas son algunas de estas pequeñas canicas que encontramos en el sitio del barco, y cuando las juntamos todas teníamos 700 que pudimos identificar. Entonces las estudiamos en este espectrómetro que pueden ver enfrente de mi estudiante y de Stan Jacobson, un profesor de geoquímica en la Universidad de Harvard. Y adentro de estas esferas encontramos esferas más pequeñas. Estas imágenes del microscopio electrónico muestran que hay esferas más pequeñas. Esta, por ejemplo, parece una pelota de soccer, y esta era la fusión de 3 esferas y después se solidificaron antes de ponerse redondas. Y aquí lo que hicimos fue un mapa de dónde se encontraron la mayoría de las esferas. Identificamos 3 regiones en donde encontramos la mayoría de las esferas. El Departamento de Defensa identificaron esta caja roja como el lugar de la explosión, y las regiones amarillas es por donde pasó el meteoro que se encuentra en anaranjado. Estas son las responsables de las 3 llamaradas de la bola de fuego. Ahora podemos identificar la composición de esas esferas que estaban en la región del meteoro. Y encontramos algo fascinante, que algunos elementos, había cientos de veces materiales que no habíamos visto antes aquí, como berilio, lántano, y era 100 veces más abundante en las esferas, sin cualquier material que pudiese venir de la Tierra o del sistema solar. Lo llamamos la composición belirio, lantano y uranio. Y de esta composición fue la que encontramos por toda la ruta que llevó el meteoro. Y así demostramos que esto venía de fuera del sistema solar, porque no se parecía a lo que encontramos en la Tierra, Marte o los asteroides. Y vemos la volatilidad de estos elementos. Estos elementos se perdieron por el resultado de la explosión. Están perdidos. Entonces, deducimos que esto viene de una explosión, que es por lo que lo asociamos al contexto de este meteorito. Entonces, todo junto, esto es una aventura muy emocionante, y el siguiente paso es ir a esa región y buscar por piezas más grandes que nos puedan decir si este objeto era natural como una piedra, o tal vez tenía un origen tecnológico, porque un objeto tecnológico puede tener bolas, botones. Entonces estamos planeando actualmente otra expedición en el año próximo para buscar los materiales de este objeto, que son de una fuerza inusual y de una velocidad inusual, en lo que se refiere a las piedras que conocemos de este sistema solar. Y esperamos que dentro de un año sepamos más. Claro, También hay una cierta discusión que habla de que el gobierno de Estados Unidos ya tenga estos materiales. Esto se discutió en la Casa de Representantes. Uno de los testigos, David Rashid, dice que hay programas acerca de ingeniería inversa, que quiere decir que a partir de las naves alienígenas se hace una tecnología. Pero no hemos visto esto, pero será de gran valor científico si el gobierno puede liberar este material o al menos información. Entonces, los científicos como yo podríamos ayudarles a deducir qué significa, porque cualquier información de los objetos que vengan de fuera del sistema solar deben de ser compartidos con todos los seres humanos, igual que la información. No es el privilegio de ningún gobierno el mantener la información lejos del público, porque no tiene nada que ver con seguridad nacional. Es algo que llegó a la Tierra desde un lugar muy lejano y queremos entender si tenemos un vecino muy lejano, porque eso nos podría inspirar a explorar el espacio y poder enseñarnos acerca de nuevas tecnologías del futuro que aún no poseemos. Entonces, en el próximos años, aprenderemos mucho más acerca de estos fenómenos anómalos que no han sido identificados, que son como lo que hemos visto que desarrollamos en la Universidad de Harvard, pero también como este meteoro que he descrito y seguramente en el próximo año o años lo vamos a hacer. Entonces, este es mi mensaje. Entonces, traigamos este tema a la atención de la ciencia y que no solo el gobierno que nos quiera decir la información que quiere, pero que el gobierno comparta su información, porque esto va a ser de vital importancia
to the public, and let's just figure out
para el público, y vamos a descifrar cuál de estos objetos nos va a dar una nueva perspectiva acerca de nuestro lugar en el universo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Loeb. You are doing an incredible apportation to humanity by studying this phenomenon, calling other scientists to do it. Thank you.
I'm thanking to Dr. Loeb for trying to incorporate this matter to science and reach out other scientists for them to incorporate so they can give us all this truth to mankind. I'm introducing now to Director of INAI, Mr. Mariano Tello, who presents here on behalf of Dr. Julieta del Rio Venegas that due to work issues could not be here. Go ahead, Mariano. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of INAI Commissioner Norma Julieta del Rio Venegas, I give you a kind regard and an apology due to major causes. She could not be with us in this enclosure. I salute the personalities with us today, the audience here, and those following through social media. Today we are into what will be a historic event. By invitation of Mr. Maussan, we are here to testify, in this case, about how access to information and transparency may influence in different issues. Universality to access to information implies that all people, regardless their origin, gender, orientation, religion, socioeconomic condition, have the inherent right to look for, receive, and disseminate information. This principle recognizes the importance of ensuring that all voices have the opportunity to be heard and that no one is excluded from the public sphere. One of the maxims we promote at NAI is that the right to know is for everyone. That is why, within the framework of this meeting, I want to share with you a special case. On March 29, 2022, it was received in the institutional email account of the Society Attention Center, where I am director, an email in which a person exercising his right to request and in which he made various queries, the main one being the following. Number one, to inform the subscriber which dependency of the Federal Public Administration is responsible for attending, investigating, and reporting on unidentified aerial phenomena or sightings by the pilots of the Mexican Navy or Air Force, and from reports from civilians regarding unidentified flying objects which feature advanced technology with movements that defy the laws of physics as we know it, among other questions he asked. This was the first time that any of the CAS advisors received a consultation about it. But with the experience of the staff, they knew which dependencies to enlist so that they could provide information about it. For this reason, a response was provided which it was suggested to the private person exercise the right of access to information before the institution which, due to their functions and powers, could store related information. It could be the Mexican Space Agency, the Chamber of Deputies, the Senate of the Republic, the Secretariat of the Navy, the Secretariat of National Defense, who in turn referred to the services to navigation in Mexican airspace. The CAS informed their requirements for submitting the requests, means, deadlines, as well as a procedure for non-conformity in the event there was a lack of response. And it should be specified that the Society Care Center did not know until that moment that the consulting person was a collaborator of ufologist Jaime Maussan. It was until October 11, 2022, that we found out through the Twitter account of Jaime Maussan, who made public congratulations to the INAI for the extensive and serious response then greeted for the opening of the topic. But the work didn't stop there. We made contact to carry out on Monday, November 14th of last year, a work meeting between the head of Tercer Milenio and Commissioner Norma Julieta del Rio Venegas, where activities were agreed to be carried out in order to strengthen the team of journalists and researchers in matters of access to information and the benefits of the National Transparency Platform. Later, on November 24th, we had a practical workshop on applications and review resources with the staff, in addition to resolving some questions about how to submit the applications and make them clear and accurate. Finally, in request 33002852201209, submitted by our team, Airspace Navigation Services provided a response specifically to number 6, in which it was requested, if it deems fair, among its general files, documents such as reports, emails, logs, as well as videos and audio reports, any similar data about sightings with unidentified flying objects or of unknown origin, to which CENEAM responded. You are informed that to address question 6, an exhaustive and reasonable search was conducted regarding the issue of unidentified flying objects, found with the magnetophone transcript for the month of May 1975, where you can read that the pilot reports to the control tower the presence of foreign objects flying over his aircraft. This is an example of how the exercise of the law and access to information and how you can obtain information in this respect protected by the state. The right of access to information is for everyone, in such a way that out of the 1,011 requests for information that have been submitted from 2003 to date, on topics related to the UAPs, the General Directorate of Attention to the Plenum has a record of 94 review resources, 93 of them already voted and 1 in substance, being 2021 the year with the highest number presented with 26, 6 of them in the presentation by Commissioner Julieta del Rio. The topics of these 93 issues were 58 on Mexican airspace, 19 on unidentified flying objects, 15 on navigation services in Mexican airspace, and 1 on alien issues. With this collaboration, we want to stress that everyone has the right to ask about the smallest detail of what is developed in governments, institutions, and public agencies, autonomous bodies, states, and municipalities. And if you have questions about how to make requests, INAI has a Society Service Center, a specialized area to support all people to make their requests. Since 2015, at CAS, we have provided more than 471,000 advice, and in 2022 alone, we break a historical record, providing 72,000 personalized advice. Daily, we attend more than 400 inquiries. Today, more than ever, this right is so important since we are living in historical moments. To mention one of the latest, the hearing in the Congress of the United States of America on July 26th, retired military personnel testified about the unidentified air phenomenon, among them Ryan Graves, former pilot of the Air Force of the United States, who are with us today in the framework of this public hearing on the legislation of unidentified anomalous phenomena. I have nothing left but to wish success to this session, which I am sure will be productive and will mark history in our country. At INAI, you will always have an ally who will see that the information is delivered to you. Thanks a lot. Well, now, if you allow me, let's precisely go with Ryan Graves, the pilot, the lieutenant of the United States Navy, who became famous after giving his testimony on July 26th. As you know, what happened there was historical, and he narrated, and surely will do it now, what his encounters were with these objects, which technologically exceeded them in the air. And I think it's going to be very interesting because it is a first-hand source, a man of great credibility, and who is really helping to make history, not only in the United States, also now in Mexico, and surely later in many places in the world. He now has an organization of pilots, and a call is made for them to join his cause. And among all the pilots, to give testimonies, certainty, and evidence to this extraordinary phenomenon. Please, Ryan Graves.
Greetings. Thank you for convening this public hearing on a topic that's been shrouded in mystery and stigmatization for far too long. Unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAP, or FANI, are real, observed, and documented by credible sources, yet we know very little about them. Thanks to efforts like today, we are starting to see that change. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy. I have witnessed advanced UAP firsthand and founded Americans for Safe Aerospace to support aircrew and military witnesses and investigate.
Y nosotros hemos investigado como pilotos militares este fenómeno. Ahora, hay tres asuntos que llaman nuestra atención. Primero, pilotos que han sido testigos. Necesitamos de nuestra experiencia, y pilotos como yo y otros hemos compartido experiencias acerca de esta investigación, pero los pilotos tienen miedo de compartir su historia. Dos, para entender estos fenómenos hay que recolectar información, porque todos los fenómenos en el espacio aéreo están reportados, no están aislados, son rutinos. Tantos pilotos militares como comerciales reconocen y se reportan estos fenómenos de manera oficial a veces. Y tres, el investigar estos fenómenos. Investigar estos fenómenos es realmente importante, sobre todo si los pilotos pueden compartir sus reportes. Nosotros también recolectamos muchos de los datos que resuelven estos misterios. Y también esto es un fenómeno global y la colaboración es importante. Hay Es importante mantener toda esta información para entender este fenómeno. Si no lo hacemos de esta manera, si no lo hacemos con una cooperación global, no va a ser posible entenderlos. Mi historia. En 2014 estábamos en mi escuadrón, los Red Reapers, en la parte de Oceana, en Virginia Beach. En nuestro sistema de radar empezamos a detectar objetos no identificados en nuestro radar. Al principio pensamos que eran otra cosa, pero cuando pudimos verificar que con nuestros sistemas y los sistemas infrarrojos no podíamos verificar su identidad. En el W72 en Virginia Beach, los objetos se describían como un objeto dentro de un cubo oscuro y dentro de un círculo, y que tenían 75 pies de diámetro. Y la instrucción fue regresar a la base, pero no hubo un conocimiento oficial de este fenómeno y tampoco se dijo nada. Entonces, se pudieron hacer diferentes informes y se pudieron hacer diferentes rastreos para poder tener un entendimiento. Vimos como los huracanes también impactaban nuestros jets, y muchos de estos impactaban sobre la costa este, y muchos de estos fenómenos se quedaron de manera desconocida. Yo creo que los americanos merecen un espacio aéreo seguro. Nuestro interés es quitar los estigmas y revelar la información. Estoy orgulloso y honorado que más de 10,000 personas se hayan unido. Nosotros cualquiera se puede unir. Estoy seguro que esto apenas se está empezando. En julio, después de que testifiqué ante el Congreso de los Estados Unidos, y ante otros testigos de estos fenómenos, se reportaron estos fenómenos y vimos la ausencia de un proceso seguro. Y muchos de los asistentes compartieron sus cuentas, y también hablamos de caso por caso dependiendo de los intereses de los testigos, y en caso de las políticas para que la investigación fuese posible, tuvimos que hablar con miembros del Congreso y también con su personal para poder lograr resoluciones que nos permitieran investigar estos fenómenos. También los pilotos comerciales son de vital importancia, tienen años de experiencia, y ellos vuelan a cerca de los 45,000 pies. Y vieron también objetos que también hacían maniobras inusuales, como vueltas, y fueron avistamientos inusuales. Y muchos buscaban explicaciones fáciles. Estamos buscando cómo explicarlo, pero el gobierno tiene información que reporta y no está evaluada, y tenemos que aprender de ello. Otros testigos son los testigos veteranos que han visto este fenómeno en sus naves. Hay muchos testigos han documentado y han sido evaluados por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, pero los militares de Estados Unidos deben de hacer más acerca del reporte de estos fenómenos. El año pasado fueron más de 10,000. Y el año pasado significaron muchos reportes que se recogieron, y tenemos muchos testigos que estuvieron apegados a los mecanismos de reporte. Ahora solo estamos rascando la superficie porque hay muchos testigos que quieren cooperar. Reportar de manera segura es vital para poder revelar la verdad. Y también los líderes del gobierno deben de hablar de esto. En organizaciones como la que de nosotros, también México puede aprender de lo que deben aprender. Primero, al nivel más fundamental es que la recolección de datos no puede ser subestimada, porque hay muchos Hay muchos casos reportados en los Estados Unidos y tantos más en los Estados Unidos. Esto también es un reto porque es una oportunidad científica, porque hay un balance delicado en cuanto a quién es responsable de esta información. Los militares de Estados Unidos quieren mantener esto en secreto, y a pesar de la legislación del 2023, el presidente como jefe al mando no quiere revelar de manera indefinida estos expedientes. Por lo tanto, hay muchas organizaciones sin fines de lucro, académicos, que quieren participar. Me alegra estar al frente de este proyecto, y por eso también tenemos la Universidad de Stanford, el proyecto Galileo en Harvard y diferentes sectores de la sociedad que quieren entender este fenómeno. Para cerrar, reconozco el escepticismo acerca de este tema, pero lo importante es evaluar y entender estos datos. Y debemos aprender de los fenómenos que se dan en cada uno de los lugares. Y espero que más pilotos mexicanos compartan sus reportes y que lo hagan de manera seria. Los pilotos están altamente entrenando para observar los cielos. Si ustedes ven mi cuenta, espero que ustedes, junto con otros pilotos, hagan estos reportes, porque nosotros representamos la seguridad aeroespacial, y también creo que la búsqueda y la investigación científica podemos encontrar una solución a este sistema. Este dilema. Gracias.
Ryan Graves' testimony is without a doubt extraordinary. We're talking about a first-hand witness who, as stated in the 60 Minutes TV show, he saw these objects every day. And that is, every day somewhere in the world a sighting happens, and I can witness to it since we receive evidence that we present daily in the news show that we have on Channel 9, showing that the activity is very intense and that it has intensified even more in the recent months. We do not doubt that soon it will be even clearer and closer. We are living extraordinary times. Now I want to introduce Lieutenant Robert Salas. By the way, he is the great-great-grandson of a Mexican president, and he was in charge of a site where there were nuclear missiles in the state of Montana in 1967. And he's going to tell you what happened, showing that there is an intrinsic relationship between these objects and nuclear activity on our planet. If we realize in 1945 the objects arrived to the Los Alamos nuclear plant, where 3 of them crashed, but they were shut down by microwave radars, demonstrating that this is their interest. Recently, the United States released a world map where 3 of the most visited places for these objects in the world are Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Fukushima. 3 places where remnants of nuclear energy exist. Evidently, the concern of these intelligences here in our ability to destroy them. Let us welcome Robert Salas, a great friend and a one-of-a-kind witness.
Thank you, Jaime. And first, I would like to express my gratitude for this opportunity to speak in
para hablar aquí en México, la tierra de mis ancestros. Es un verdadero honor. Y hablar de este tema, ¿no? Acerca de los fenómenos aéreos no identificados y de las armas nucleares. Gracias, diputado Luna y legisladores. Como resultado de esta solicitud, juntamos información del gobierno y vamos a presentar estos documentos. En enero de 1996, creo que tenemos una copia, pero no se está mostrando en la pantalla ahora mismo. Pero me voy a referir a esto y voy a mencionar algunas cosas. Esto es tema de el vuelo estratégico del Echo Flight. Estos fenómenos se vieron con una diferencia de 10 segundos cada uno. Pasó en la mañana de marzo 16 del 1967. Y esto, bueno, nos hizo regresar a las alergias estratégicas. Como causa del incidente, se condujo una investigación en donde no se arrojó ninguna conclusión. Las indicaciones fue de que las dos computadoras y los sistemas de control se saturaron momentáneamente y la razón de ese saturamiento es desconocida hasta este momento, y después solicitaron información significativa a través de otras investigaciones que se hicieron inmediatamente. El Estado negó categóricamente, ¿no?, que estos 10 misiles pudieran estar bajo esta circunstancia, y que dos ingenieros participaron en esta investigación. Nos referiremos a ellos más adelante. Pensé en un telegrama que recibí. Había una descripción del incidente que yo experimenté en ese año 1967. Y después declaré públicamente que este incidente ocurrió al mismo tiempo que los ovnis fueron avistados en otros lugares. Si se refieren al diagrama, muestra la ubicación de donde las instalaciones de Oscar y Echo se encuentran. Yo estaba equivocado al principio porque los recuerdos que yo tengo y en las investigaciones, primero yo no estaba en servicio en Echo durante ese incidente. Estaba en la torre de control de Oscar, y esto ocurrió en marzo 24 de 1967. Y entonces me di cuenta que dos incidentes separados habían ocurrido con 8 días de diferencia. En marzo 24 de 1967 estaba en labor como comandante, y nuestras instalaciones estaban ubicadas a unas 100 millas de la ciudad de Great Falls, en Montana. Aquí hay un dibujo, creo que tengo un dibujo, algo visual. Muestra la ubicación de la cápsula Harden bajo tierra, 60 pies bajo tierra, que teníamos todo el equipo para control de los misiles, y no había ningún control de misiles arriba del suelo. Entonces no había manera posible de engañar o de truquear lo que estaba sucediendo arriba. La siguiente imagen que mostramos es las instalaciones de lanzamiento. Ahí pueden ver inclusive desde donde se controla. Es una cápsula que está bajo tierra. La puerta frontal de esta de esta instalación, lleva a la cápsula. En la siguiente lámina pueden ver la instalación de lanzamiento. Por favor, presten atención a la cubierta del misil y hasta arriba verán un objeto de 20 toneladas que generalmente se mueven sobre rieles durante el lanzamiento. Y hablaremos de esto después. Durante nuestro turno de 24 horas estábamos aislados del resto del personal de la instalación. Estaba el personal de seguridad a nivel del suelo que estaba para cualquier tema de seguridad. El controlador de vuelo estaba junto con el guardia de seguridad y estaban, bueno, todo el personal en el lugar. Nuestro personal de operación, al menos uno de ellos, estaba totalmente alerta durante todo nuestro turno. Algunas veces durante esa tarde, mientras yo estaba a cargo, algunos estaban durmiendo. Las personas de arriba reportaron que, de manera muy calmada, que habían visto luces en el cielo volando sobre nuestra instalación y que estaban haciendo maniobras inusuales, como volando muy rápido, pararse completamente en el aire y haciendo vueltas en reversa en 90 grados sin hacer ruido, sin tener alas y en apariencia sin tener ningún aparato de control, algo que parecía ser algo como una nave. Entonces, bueno, en aquel momento tampoco me preocuparon mucho las luces en el cielo, pero después de un breve periodo recibí la segunda llamada del guardia y esta vez estaba muy alterado y asustado. Estaba gritando por el teléfono, gritalmente, y cuando pude llegar, vi que había un objeto azul y naranja que estaba circulando sobre la puerta principal. Era de forma oval, pero era diferente como de verlo por lo brillante de la luz. Era una luz como pulsante. Él y los otros guardias tenían las armas apuntando a ese objeto y querían saber qué tenían que hacer. Al principio me quedé asombrado por este reporte, pero ciertamente encontré increíble y muy serio. Le dije a los guardias de seguridad que teníamos que asegurar la instalación y que no teníamos que asegurarnos que no hubiese ningún daño a ninguno de los guardias y que todo se mantuviese intacto. Hablé con mi comandante, el teniente Frederick Maywell, para informarle acerca de estas llamadas. Antes de que pudiera hablar, escuchamos una sirena estridente que decía que los misiles habían sido deshabilitados. Y entonces todo se iluminó en segundos. En ese momento los 10 misiles se volvieron no operativos. Vimos indicadores, ¿no?, de las luces de las otras instalaciones de misiles. Vimos el estatus de los sistemas automáticos que teníamos para determinar la causa de estas fallas, y todos los reportes de estatus fueron idénticos. El sistema falló y publicamos un reporte. Fuimos de nuevo con el guardia de arriba para determinar su estatus y el estatus del guardia que había sido lastimado. Y él dijo que el objeto se había retirado a una velocidad alta. Y los oficiales de las dos instalaciones de misiles también hablaron acerca de la entrada y reportaron el mismo objetos que estaban rondando, que estaban instruidos ellos estaban instruidos para regresar a nuestras instalaciones y perdieron el contacto con el guardia principal. Después regresaron y dijeron lo mismo sucedió en otro vuelo. En ese momento recuerdo que pensaba en otro vuelo pasó lo mismo y muchos años después entendí que también había sucedido en el Eco Flight 8 días antes. El Eco Flight era similar al Oscar Flight de marzo 16 de 1967. El coronel retirado Walter Figger estaba al frente y temprano esa mañana todos los misiles estaban deshabilitados. Y lo mismo había pasado sobre las instalaciones de Eco Flight. Me dieron su testimonio en una cinta de audio. Estos fueron también el resultado, también una falla del PI de control. Y entonces el incidente de Flight fue desclasificado en 1994 y pude ver algunos documentos en donde la Fuerza Aérea hablaba de ese incidente. Bajo una ley de divulgación. Entonces, después de esto se hicieron una prueba para los sistemas en donde reportaban una serie de fallas en el sistema de guía a través de una señal eléctrica que rompió el sistema y que hizo que quedara desactivado. Se dice que en la opinión del equipo era que las señales externas causaron que se apagaran. Es decir, los objetos no identificados estaban mandando una señal particular a papeles de concreto en donde le mandaba una señal a una parte del misil en donde en segundos quedaron deshabilitados. La verdad es que la posibilidad de esto es muy remota porque esto no hubiera sido posible en el aire con una diferencia de 10 segundos. Yo estoy convencido que ninguna tecnología humana de antes o de ahora pudiera haber causado esto. Enfatizo que no hubo daño permanente a ninguno de los sistemas de misiles durante el incidente. Estos dos incidentes no fueron ni los primeros ni los únicos donde los ovnis deshabilitaron misiles nucleares. En el 96, en North Dakota, 10 misiles fueron deshabilitados, igual por la misma razón, falla en el control. Hubo testigos de ese evento que pudieron hablar de estos hechos y después, con una diferencia de 6 meses, muchos misiles más de los Estados Unidos fueron desactivados. Los testimonios del señor Chandeli y míos fueron presentados este año a la oficina de los Estados Unidos encargada de los eventos no identificados. Ahora son documentos históricos acerca de estos eventos no identificados y ninguna agencia ha reconocido públicamente estos eventos, a pesar de haber habido un número sustancial de incidentes similares que voy a describir en mi libro. Estos dos que se refieren a armas nucleares y a otro tipo de encuentros. En 1964, el teniente Robert Jacobs pudo grabar algo que describió en sus propias palabras. ¿Podemos ver el video? Por favor, ¿puedes subir el volumen? Vemos lo que está sucediendo a ese punto y de repente en este cuadro vemos un objeto que va cazando a la misma velocidad. Dispara un rayo de luz y después el objeto lanza otro rayo de luz rodeando y después se va por el mismo lugar donde llegó. En 1968, la base militar de Dakota del Norte el personal observó como un ovni aterrizaba sobre una instalación donde había misiles. Les voy a mostrar una imagen acerca de estas instalaciones de lanzamientos y aquí pueden ver la descripción del objeto que vio. Dos segmentos conectados por algo que parece un túnel o un tubo. Parte del objeto era de color naranja brillante, casi como el color de la lava, y había un color verdoso. El tubo era de color plata. En 1967 también hubo en Holanda, se observaron como también había cerca de una base. Aquí hay una imagen de ese objeto. Y el siguiente día, este objeto voló lentamente a una altitud baja. Lo vieron docenas. Hubo muchos testigos y los testigos hablaron públicamente y dijeron que en esta base probablemente se guardaban armas nucleares. ¿Por qué armas nucleares? Las próximas dos gráficas, se refieren también al primer proyecto atómico. Muestran que en 1967 aproximadamente 47,000 bombas, armas nucleares estaban disponibles. Hoy hay 9 naciones en posesión de armas nucleares y hay un máximo de 60,000 alrededor de la mitad de los 80. Desde la creencia de la carrera armamentista, se han creado armamento para garantizar la destrucción mutua, para asegurar así que ninguna nación nos ataque con armas nucleares. Entonces, esto ha resultado en una política que incrementa el resto de la guerra, porque todos quieren tener sus armas nucleares. El riesgo el mundo está en un gran riesgo gracias a las armas nucleares. En cuanto haya una guerra nuclear o una disputa militar. Okay. Los poderes, los que detentan más armas nucleares tienen más de 147,000 ojivas nucleares, ¿no? Hablando de Hussein, también amenazaron con el despliegue, también la India, y también desarrollaron más bases para estas armas. Los ovnis se pueden confundir también como drones armados. Y así los ataques también a Pakistán, hablando de las bases nucleares, caen en las manos también de organizaciones terroristas. Rusia y Ucrania han estado en guerra durante un año. Rusia ha dicho públicamente que ellos están decididos a utilizar armas nucleares de manera táctica. Voy a terminar rápidamente. Mientras esas 9 naciones y otras tengan la capacidad de amenazar, incrementan el riesgo de que gracias a las guerras, a las armas nucleares, exista una guerra. Y lo que queremos es eliminar esta amenaza. Gracias a los testimonios, podemos hablar de esto de las armas nucleares. Podemos atestiguar que en estos eventos no quisieron destruir estas armas, sino que estas armas pueden destruir la civilización en una guerra. Entonces, el mensaje que quisieron dar y enfatizar es que es destruir las armas nucleares si queremos seguir viviendo como especie. En los Estados Unidos ha reconocido oficialmente la existencia de los ovnis y podemos dedicar esfuerzos a abolir las armas nucleares a nivel mundial. Gracias por esta oportunidad y gracias por esta presentación.
Thanks to Robert Salas. Now, we are going to introduce Julio Darwish, who is cabin pilot, founder of the Association of Observers of Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, which is called Unknown Vector, Vector Desconocido. Go ahead, Julio, please. Good afternoon, how are you doing? My name is Julio Darwish. I am captain. I am a commercial pilot by profession, and I have 17,000 hours of flight in a commercial jet, and I am still active. I want to tell you today that this issue of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon is something very important to consider due to the events and cases reported throughout the time. It is a phenomenon that does exist and is as important as the control and regulation of the use of drones near the airport. It may be a hazard to aviation. I am co-founder of the Unknown Vector Association, dedicated to the research and objective observation of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon, composed of a group of air controllers and pilots from Mexico. I personally am a fan of astronomy. I have a telescope, I am a sky observer. I know all the constellations of our celestial vault, and I can tell you that I know how to orient myself watching the stars. Throughout my life, I have given the task of visiting places with ancestral ruins in various parts of the planet. In almost all of these places, I have noticed that our ancestors had some type of contact with beings from other worlds or more advanced civilizations, and that they received stellar knowledge, in addition to technological help to build impressive temples. This whole issue of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon is not new. Speaking specifically of the topic, there is a tendency for humanity to see things in an extreme way, black or white, good or bad, but there is a wider concept of seeing things. It is known as the tetralectic vision. It means that we have to learn to see things from different angles, in a wider way, and in all their possibilities. In our association, we try to be as objective as possible about what is seen in the sky. We see different points of view. We try, first of all, to reach a logical conclusion. We know that there is a lot of garbage in space which is floating there. There are many satellites that reflect the light of the sun. At certain angles, we see them as lights that shine in space. This phenomenon is known as satellite reflection. Like the moon and the planets, we can see them because they reflect the light of the sun. This is very simple to understand. I'm going to give you an example. In 2009, the satellite app notified me that it was going to pass a bag of tools. It was a backpack-sized tool bag. It escaped from an astronaut from the space station and was in orbitation. And it was seen. I saw it like a very small star orbiting. It went around the planet for around 8 months until it was destroyed by the atmosphere's friction. Imagine everything that can be seen now, the satellites that the SpaceX company has placed into orbit in its Starlink project. There is a lot of satellite reflection. In the future, the space should have regulation for this type of events. We have to learn to analyze before acting. Why do I tell you all this? So that it can be understood that those of us who are in the aeronautical environment are very clear when there is something unknown in the sky. Our eyes are trained to recognize what is presented in the heavens, from other aircraft, balloons, drones, helicopters, satellite reflections, rocket launches. There are hundreds of sighting reports throughout the history of aviation, a phenomena that we have not been able to identify, with inexplainable movements from the physics we handle. But no one wants to talk about this officially. The Mexican researcher Alfonso Salazar and there are retired pilots, like Captain Antonio Herce, who have dedicated many years to research and compilation of UFO events in the aviation of Mexico and Latin America. There is a lot of seriously documented bibliography in this respect. There are impressive reports and cases for which we find no explanation. For a long time, air controllers and pilots have asked, how can we analyze these sightings scientifically? What do we do with the evidence? There is no official report format which follows up an unidentified anomalous object or phenomenon. The pilots and controllers who know me know about my fashion to the UFO topic, now called UAP, and for a long time they have sent me their evidence. Reports of some objects with horizontal and vertical movements impossible for any known aircraft. Cases that we have debated and came to the conclusion of saying, let's send this to Mr. Jaime Maussan. He has never removed his finger from the line. So that way we established contact with Mr. Jaime. From this contact we found out that there has been a proposal for a long time. The Tercer Milenio team had a proposal to make amendments to the already existing laws and achieve official recognition of the existence of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon. This would have a great benefit to be able to follow up the protocols, to be able to act in conjunction with the air traffic control centers. Air controllers are the ones who take care of us. They organize all transits to give us an ordered sequence to our destinations. Without them, aviation would be chaos. Air controllers also leave experiences of sightings, objects, anomalous phenomena on their screens, in addition to receiving many verbal reports from the pilots. This will be told in more detail by a very important person from the control center who accompanies us today. The pilots are grateful, together with the controllers, for having been taken into account in this hearing, that they will listen to our testimony and point of view. For us as an association, it's very encouraging to know that someone is considering formally making amendments under the organized laws, the existence of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon, and that the phenomenon could finally have recognition in the laws for the protection of Mexican airspace. Those of us who research the cosmos know that there must be a lot of life in the universe, an immeasurable multidimensional diversity of life that we still do not understand. Some people ask me if this information could cause fear in the population. My answer is no. I really care more about what we do to ourselves as humanity and what we do to our planet. The origin of the word human comes from humidity. We are 3/4 of water, 1/4 of earth, of the other elements. We are in proportion like the planet we inhabit. Each being must be composed with the main elements of its planet. We, the animals, the plants, the trees, we are children of the earth. The Tonantzin, the Pachamama, Gaia, is our mother. We have to take care of it and respect it. We are made of atoms, we are energy, and the time has come to raise our vibration and frequency, to be able to expand our consciousness. It is time to realize that we are one with the cosmos and we are not alone in the universe. Thank you. As Captain Julio Darwish said, thank you very much for taking us into account. I think it's time to listen to the pilots, now also to the air controllers. I have known Enrique Colbeck since we were children. Lucky we were to go to the same high school, High School 4. Then we separated our paths, and one day I found out that he was an air controller. And for some reason, we spoke to each other to tell me, don't be bothered, but here in the tower, out of control, everyone laughs at you. Later, another night, he talked to me to tell me, what the hell is happening? These objects are moving everywhere. We have them on radar. They are reporting them. What is it? What do we do? Enrique Colbeck. Very good afternoon, everyone. I will try to be brief and explicit. I hope to achieve it. I thank you all for listening to me and, above all, for paying attention to this topic, which is very important. Very good afternoon. My name is Enrique Colbeck Vergara. I am a commercial pilot and air traffic controller at the airport. I currently work as a Mexico route radar controller at the Benito Juárez Airport in Mexico City. I have been a controller for 48 years, having worked in more than 10 airports in the Mexican Republic. I am here to witness the dangerous existence of this phenomenon, which is not a myth, it is not a legend or invented story, it is a fact, which strongly commits the highest responsibility and performance of my profession. To maintain order and expedited and, above all, safe aviation in our country, within the national and international regulatory parameters that govern it, this phenomenon does not distinguish or prevent our aeronautical operations. They simply ignore it, dangerously invading airspaces exclusive for ascents, descents, approaches, and routes of our country. This is precisely where the safety of aeronautical operations is highly compromised, and because of it, is a potential danger. This phenomenon is shown with a very superior and different technology than that currently developed in the world. It apparently drives with will, with a determined navigation, appears and disappears suddenly, maneuvers and navigates different from what is known. By invading airspaces, this is very important, they violate laws and regulations, whatever is forming this phenomenon, and keeps it in presence in our airspace. They compromise the aeronautical, civil, and military authorities when they invade that airspace, the sovereignty of our country. This is what the phenomenon does in the world and in our airspace. Throughout my work, I have been an involuntary witness of this phenomenon and its interaction with aviation in my country. For the obviousness of time, I am going to allow me to quote only 4 examples of what was said above and the danger it involves. Of course, if anyone wants to delve into this information, there are people like Jaime and other characters who study it, who have perfectly documented these topics that I'm going to talk about now. I'm just going to point them out. The Mazatlán case, which is very important. It was one of the first ones that I was aware of while I was already working. It happened on November 19th, 1975. This case is of 3 aircraft that, flying in the airspace of Mazatlán, were intercepted in their flight in some way by an object that... There were 2 commercial aircrafts, one of them was a private one, and it was forced to change its flight plan and descend in Mazatlán due to an emergency, precisely due to the presence and closeness of this object. The worst thing about the case is that this phenomenon came so close to him that it even practically accompanied him to land, and everyone realized that. But there was the presence of aeronautical authorities, and the pilots were already on the ground, one from the extinct airline Mexicana. And this private flight landed and there made their report on this issue. Evidently, the authorities should have a report on this. The second case to which I will refer is also very serious. I had to be present at that moment. I was working at night. This is the case of Aeroméxico on July 28, 1994, at 10:30 p.m., more or less, where a domestic flight aircraft coming from Guadalajara to Mexico City passed through my control, and in our radar signal, which I will explain later, if anyone wants it, we have 2 ways to conceptualize radar detection. These 2 objects that were approaching the aircraft were primary echo. We did not give them importance because we didn't have traffic in that area in which this aircraft was flying. Go to the next control. I'm going to rest, and at that moment, this aircraft receives an impact on the main gear, on the right leg, on the turn to track 5, there at the World Trade Center. But the curious thing about this is that 30 minutes before, we received calls from aeronautics people, because telephones are specific, that an object was flying over statically at the World Trade Center, and that the aircraft that passed by there passed into it very close, about which we had no information. We never saw anything on the radar. And unfortunately, this happened. That was what made me change my way of thinking. Immediately, when I realized the danger this aircraft was encountered, it could have gone to the ground. Right there on the Insurgentes Street, one of the most important streets in our country, and this would have been chaos. And of course, the pilots were vulnerable and the controllers are at that level by then. The third case, I am being very brief, sorry, the case of Morelia, which occurred on October 20th, 2002. In this, there was illicit interference, that is a federal crime of this phenomenon, that appeared at the head of the runways of runway 23 in this case, and prevented the takeoff of an aircraft, a 727 from an airline today extinct. The pilot and the controller realized that at the head of the runway, there were very large metallic-looking objects, more or less 20 meters in diameter, that were rising and falling slowly, and they were not 1, there were 15 or 20, and evidently the aircraft could not take off. That caused a serious problem. The authorities at that time raised the aeronautical alerts. There was testimony from the firefighters who were near that head. People in particular saw them, and a report was also made about it. The aeronautical authorities must also have this. An aircraft was prevented from taking off for 15 minutes. This is a crime, however. It was a precaution. All the people realized about it, and finally the aircraft lost sight of these objects. The people who were in the control tower finally allowed this aircraft to take off. And I, who was working in the control center at that time, entering the afternoon shift, a colleague receives that aircraft in his control with a very nervous and scared pilot saying that he had almost collided with some spheres at that time. That is another of the very serious cases that occurred in Mexico. The other one where I had the opportunity to intervene, they invited me to give my opinion and do research about how air traffic was involved in this phenomenon with defense. It was in the case of Campeche, which Mr. Maussan already mentioned a moment ago. And this is from a patrol of the Mexican Air Force that was on a raid precisely to detect drug trafficking and illegal airstrips. These people with quite sophisticated equipment on board have detection, radar, and equipment called FLIR that allows them to observe the heat produced by some devices to determine them because there was no visual contact with this aircraft. This phenomenon passes through the Gulf, heads east, intercepts the plane, surrounds it, and finally abandons it. What you saw is part of the recording, lasting more or less 30 minutes. But this put that crew in danger, and we do not know how this phenomenon reacts. There is danger. So all I can do is tell you that you have to pay close attention to this. I am very grateful that this opportunity is given for people in general. But of course, the parts of the government that are involved, because they are, pay serious attention to this. And I mean at the highest level of the concept that helps the pilots and controllers and whoever is involved have the power and have the elements to be able to either evade the phenomenon or be able to live with it, as we do with the other meteors in the country in our atmosphere. And because when a controller or a pilot finds himself in an impasse, there's no way how to react and what to continue here to report and what to do. That is very serious. Thank you very much for your attention, and may God bless you. Now we are going to introduce Andrea Perez Simondini, who is director of Sephora in Argentina, and who also comes to represent pilots from Argentina of the ALAS organization. Go ahead, please. I come from Argentina representing ALAS, which is Latin America for Safe Airspace, which is chaired by one of the most experienced pilots with 16,000 flight hours and who has had an important experience. And we want to make a presentation taking advantage of and thanking the Deputy Luna, to Jaime, and to the Congress that gives us this opportunity to express ourselves. There are many incident reports describing recent UFO sightings by pilots and tower control personnel in the controlled airspace of Argentina and Latin America, which convey the serious concerns that aviators have about possible collisions with unknown objects. There are also many reports of phenomena that occur in rivers, seas, lagoons, which in their movement bring together transmedia capacities that today are one of the extraordinary factors, what they do when entering and leaving the waters to get lost in deep space. Unresolved aerial encounters of what are now called UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, are submitted as incident reports to the Aviation Safety Reporting System, NASA's ASRS, describe events in the airspace of the United States that highlight current safety concerns about the origin of those events. Also, those same concerns occur in our Latin America countries that have a rich casuistry, where pilots and controllers are constantly have been facing these mysteries that need to be addressed. There is a need to have a formal reporting system where pilots, technicians, tower operators, communications, runway personnel, river, seas, lagoon personnel, operational, military, civil personnel who face these experiences can directly or indirectly, in its connection to the experience, give information about these events without being harassed, without being threatened, and without being evaded when renewing the certificates, psychological exams, and all these types of situations that put us in functions. Latin America for Safe Airspace, ALAS, intends to be an area where you can report on UAP incidents and the possible security problems related to them. In Argentina, there is an entity dependent on the General Secretariat of the Argentine Air Force, the CIADE, which has changed its name. It is the Aerospace Identification Center that facts the complaints, and listen to this. It only takes events that require photographs or videos for study and ends up discarding the experiences of the story of the pilots or technical personnel, not to mention the civil population. There are pilots who, faced with this lack of interest about their experiences, have expressed their frustration for not knowing where to satisfactorily report their sightings, and have approached to CEFORA, which is the commission that I chair and now ALAS, for the security that gives a pilot with the experience of Pablo Ducó to objectively deepen those experiences. We understand that there is a model launched in the United States directed by Ryan Graves, America for Safe Airspace, a civil organization linked to defense whose mission is to collect these complaints and investigate these encounters with UAPs and report directly to the AARO Commission that today studies all means, the office dependent on the Pentagon, so that these events can be deeped. When a pilot reports an incident that could be detected by radar without being able to identify its origin, without being able to establish contact and communication of any kind, it becomes a problem, because there is a risk of possible collision in air. This allows us to evoke two notions linked to aerospace safety. On one hand, the difficulties in air transit operations, which colleagues said well, and on the other hand, a problem of sovereignty in the face of the uncertainty generated by unknown traffic and its intention regarding the flight in the territory of each of our countries. On the other hand, if the pilots report incidents which do not have a radar reading, the need to have the visual report in as much detail as possible becomes fundamental and decisive, given that by not having communication with the aircraft and not being aware of its presence, The management of data is strategic for the management of the situation. The reports sent to ALAS will be treated confidentially, keeping the identity of the witness confidential so that his integrity is not compromised and thus he is not exposed to retaliation or legal litigation for the handling of the situation. On the other hand, guaranteeing the anonymity of the complainant will encourage the reporting of incidents of strangeness in all media, which will be part of an online database so that they are free of public access. The data will only be exposed with the consent of the complainant for public communication. To make it short, I want to tell you that, for example, when pilots report incidents, and I am going to give two specific examples. We had the case of Bariloche on July 31st, 1995, where Jorge Polanco, in an escape maneuver, that maneuver is anticipated by the phenomenon, and that could have caused a dangerous situation in the air traffic operation. And an event that occurred on November 2nd, 1972, which involved the National Gendarmerie practice flight. The pilot, given the order to go identify the phenomenon, is advanced by that phenomenon and was forced to do a corkscrew, 600 meters and dive. This is a clear example of why it is important to study these phenomena. These objects appear suddenly and seem to be floating without showing any sign of movement, generating observables that we take as differential category, not replicable in terrestrial technology, such as hypersonic speeds above 30,000, 40,000 kilometers per hour, anti-gravity flight, coming at that speed, stopping at point zero and abruptly changing direction. And what has changed the paradigm of these studies, which is medium tranquil flight, the ability of these phenomena to get into the water, get out, fly in our atmosphere and leave our atmosphere to get lost outside of it. We are facing the most important discovery of humanity. Latin America has extraordinary cases. These cases define non-replicable technology, and we believe it is time to face it. That moment is now, because now we have the opportunity to know, and everything depends on us uniting so that this is taken to all the countries of our region, in principle, and of the whole world. Thank you very much, and we hope it is replicated in Argentina next year. Thank you. Now we are going to ask the Honorable Congressman of the House of Representatives of Japan, Yoshiharu Asakawa, to tell us his own experience. He witnessed the sighting and has been a congressman who has been pushing in Japan this reality, especially in the Congress. Go ahead.
皆さんこんにちは。日本の横浜から参りました衆議院議員の浅川義治と申します。今日はこの権威あるメキシコの下院議会公聴会の陳述人としてお招きをいただきました。大変光栄に思っております。議長、副議長をはじめ、各議員、そして関係者の皆様、そしてこれまでジャーナリストとして信念を貫かれてこられました、羽井マウサンさんに感謝を申し上げます。どうもありがとうございます。10日の日に、メキシコに参りました。このメキシコに来て、2つ知りました。1つは皆さん本当に明るくていい方です。タクシーの運転手さん
We are not translating. No estamos traduciendo. Un momento, por favor.
最初からOK ですか。一つは皆さん本当に明るく朗らかでいい方で親切でした。そして2つ目は食事がどれもこれも美味しくて、日本でタコスというと硬いチップを思い浮かべるんですが、ここメキシコに来てタコスというのは柔らかいものもあるということを知りました。そしてほんのちょっと残念だったのは酸素が薄くて少し歩いただけでも息が切れてしまうということです。私は衆議院議員として1年半ほど国会で UAP の質問をしています。今日は UAP を UFO と置き換えて同じ意味でお話をいたします。私が国会で UAP のことを取り上げてきたのは、もしそれが他国の最新兵器や偵察機であった場合、どうするのか、いわゆる安全保障上の危機感からです。今、映し出されている、スクリーンに映し出されている写真は、私が国会で質問をしている時の写真で、左端で立っているのが私、浅川義治です。次の2枚目の写真は、NASA のネルソン長官が国会に来られた時のものです。UAP についても質問をしました。ネルソン長官からは、今年の夏までに NASA として UAP が何であるかという回答を出すと言われていました。私は天文少年でした。カール・セーガン博士のような天文学者になるのが夢でした。現在、私は55歳です。子どもの頃から日本の UFO の第一人者である八尾純一さんの UFO 番組を見ていました。中学生の時には、私は初めて明確に UFO を見ました。横浜市金沢区高船台という私が以前住んでいた自宅の前で、日没後の西の空に異様な物体が浮いていることに気がつきました。天体望遠鏡のサブスコープで見ると、黒いいくつも角のある不規則な形の物体に10個ほどのさまざまな色がついていました。月くらいの視直径でした。視直径というのは見かけの大きさが月と同じぐらいだったということです。ほとんど動かず、親や近所の人にも声をかけてしばらく見ていました。だんだんと黒い物体が分裂し、4つに分かれました。そして離れながら西の空に沈んでいき、見えなくなりました。どう考えても飛行機やヘリコプター、あるいは風船ではありませんでした。そして何よりも不思議だったのは、夕日が沈んだ後ですが、高さがありますので、物体が何らか夕日に照らされていてもよかったのに、全く照らされず真っ黒だったということです。次に私が UFO の問題が大きな政治問題だと確信した出来事をお話します。1986年の11月、多くの方がご存知だと思いますが、日本の日航ジャンボ機 UFO 遭遇事件の報道で、結果として木星の見間違いだったというふうに結論付けられて、 日本では報道されました。これには大きな疑問を抱きました。その頃から UFO には政治的な何らかの問題があると考えるようになりました。一方、私は天文少年でしたので、今も科学的に物事を見たり考えたりしています。それでも私は UFO が地球外から来た人工知能を搭載した探査機、あるいは時間の尺度が地球生物と大きく異なる生命体が乗り込んでいる乗り物、いわゆる一般的に UFO という可能性はゼロではないと思っています。しかし、そのような証拠を私は手にしていません。UFO が宇宙人の乗り物という説で、国会では質問がとてもできません。アメリカでは下院議会で公聴会も開かれ、デビッド・グルーシュ元空軍少佐は、墜落した UFO とか、非人類の乗組員という証言もされましたが、日本でそのような話をすると、オカルトの話になってしまいます。しかし、日本の政府も UFO 情報が何もないとは思っておりません。何度か私は国会で質問をしております。この UFO、UAP の問題、大きく分けて4つあります。1つは、先ほど申し上げました安全保障上の問題、航空安全上の問題、そして情報公開の問題もあります。3つ目には、科学的な研究課題として大きく残ります。そして4つ目は、人権を損なわれる、UFO の話をすることで仲間外れにされる、そういったことが日本ではよくあります。最初の安全保障上の問題は、日本の自衛隊の力を伸ばしていかなければいけない、そういった議論がありますが、目先3年ないし5年、そういったスパンで考えられています。しかし私は10年、20年先まで考えて研究をしなければならないと進言をしております。それは最新兵器だった場合、日本の近隣諸国の最新兵器だったときにどうするのかという点もあります。また、日本はアメリカと日米安全保障条約が結ばれて日米同盟の国であります。つい先日、アメリカは日本の上空に UAP が多数あると発表いたしました。ほっとしていると発表したのです。しかし、日本の政府は何も国会に情報開示をいたしません。自衛隊が独自で得られた情報があっても、公表すべきではないものは公表しなくていいというのが、今の日本の政府のスタンスです。私はアメリカがこの UAP の情報公開が進んできたのは、民主主義は情報がすべてです。自由と情報があって民主主義が成り立つ。アメリカの議会がこの UAP の問題、これまでも長く議論されてきたと思いますが、今ここで情報開示をしなければということで、法律を制定したと考えております。2番目の科学的な研究課題につきましては、日本の文部科学省に質問をしました。既存の原理で物体が動くこと以外、空中に浮遊するようなことは確認できていないという答弁です。しかし、日本の民間企業ですが、宇宙開発に携わっていた研究員の方が、重力に反する動きをする原理を考えました。実はアメリカの国防総省とも情報交換を行っているということですが、日本の政府は 情報交換を行っておりません。もしかしたら重力に逆らう原理が日本の研究者の発案でできているかもしれないということを皆さんに今日はご紹介もしたいと思いました。アメリカの国防総省の DARPA という研究開発の組織があるかと思いますが、そこでは重力に反する動きを研究することがすでに行われているといいます。もしも人類が重力に反する動きをする原理を持っていたらと考えると、これは多くの科学者にとってどうして秘密にされているのかという疑問になると思います。そして4つ目の課題です。UFO を目撃したことを報告することによって不利益を被る人がたくさんいます。日本の航空会社のパイロットたちが UFO を目撃したということを会社に報告したことで、地上職の勤務にさせられてたという話がよく聞かれました。さすがに今はそのようなことはないということを政府から回答いただいておりますが、私自身も UFO の目撃、あるいはそれ以外の不思議な現象について話をすることによって、いわゆる仲間外れにされておりました。モーサンさんも大変だったと私は思っております。UFO の問題は民主主義の前提である情報開示と密接に関係があることは先ほども申し上げました。想定外の最新兵器であった場合、国防上の観点から事前に最大限情報を収集し対応しなければなりません。残念ながら UAP の問題は私の所属する日本維新の会を含め、日本の国会に議席を持つ政党のどこも政策としては掲げておりません。しかし、だからこそ私は想定外を想定するために UFO 問題に取り組んでいきたいと考えております。そして政府が情報公開をすることによって、より国民から信用が増し、そして強い信頼がされるようになると確信をしております。2023年4月14日、日本の衆議院安全保障委員会、私の質疑で、防衛省の高官である大和参考人が概要以下のように述べました。UAP の記録が防衛省にあるかないか、防衛省の情報収集能力を明らかにすることになるので答えられない。ただ、いろいろな情報を収集しております。当該の情報について、その後に収集された情報などと照らし合わせて、その過程で、これは国民の皆様にちゃんとご説明する必要があるというものが出てくれば、それは公表するということはあり得るということです。したがって、これまで公表していなかったからといって、ずっと永遠に公表されないんだということでは、必ずしもないということであります。この大和参考人の答弁というのは、私は国会質疑の中で1本も2本も進んだと考えております。日本でもこの UAP の問題についての情報開示がもうしばらくしたらあるのではないかと思っております。今後も今日このメキシコでの公聴会での参加をきっかけとして、昨日から今日出席されている多くの陳述人、そして関係者の皆さんと交流を図らせていただいております。この UAP の問題は世界共通の課題だと私は考えております。そして世界の壁を低くしていくことのできる問題でもあると考えております。ぜひ多くの皆様にもご理解いただき、そしてメキシコが UAP の先進国になることを期待して、私の陳述を終わりたいと思います。どうもありがとうございました。
Now we are going to introduce, it seems to me that it was an extraordinary presentation by the congressman from Japan, Mr. Asakawa, who reveals to us the situation and how difficult it has been for him to talk about the topic and the need that also exists in Japan, openness and information so that people are informed. The time has come to act differently, to act with honesty and truth in the face of something that is happening in the heavens, that is not paranormal, that is not extraordinary. They are simply intelligent beings who have arrived from other worlds. And I have the honor of introducing Mr. Ronnie Burnett. He is one of the men who organized a public hearing of the Brazilian Congress on June 24th, 2022. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Honorable Mr. Sergio Gutierrez Luna, representatives, authorities, guests present, Mexican people. The first official record of anomalous phenomena in Brazil date back to 1560, when Father José de Anchieta wrote the Letter of São Vicente to describe the nature of the country recently discovered by the Portuguese. In the letter, Anchieta talks about beings from the forest called culupiras, beings from the rivers called pupiaras.
Se vio en Pupiaras y Boitatá. Todos estos fenómenos van a ser responsables de hasta pedir la muerte. Son hechos inexplicables que se están registrados hasta hoy en día y que son investigados por el gobierno brasileño, como lo podemos ver hoy aquí. Desde todos estos años se han visto varios casos, han sido reportados por los medios de comunicación. En 1952 se vieron las primeras fotografías de este tipo de vuelos, de este tipo de objetos, y estas fotografías salieron en el país. Fueron casos investigados por grupos. El jefe de comisión de investigación de estos objetos que estaban volando, y esto permitió que en 1954, debido a todo lo que se estaba diciendo a las Fuerzas Armadas brasileñas, el tema de los ovnis empezó a considerarse que se tenía que tratar con toda seriedad. Vimos qué fue lo que se estaba revisando, y cuando se empezaron a ver estos objetos, se han dedicado a un caso donde hubo un sobrevuelo de hasta 3 horas que se estuvo viendo. También se vio cómo se acercaba a un vuelo comercial. Desde finales de 1957 y el inicio de 1958 hubo varios aviones que pudieron observar y autoridades que pudieron observar, y todo esto mostró cómo estaba sobrevolando una isla en 1968. Hubo diferentes fenómenos en Brasil y ya había un número tan importante que se identificaron. Se empezaron a tener estos sistemas de investigación que se llama SEOANI, que tuvo la colaboración de organizaciones civiles, y también se tuvo observadores voluntarios. Y todo se empezó a hacer un estudio con personal del ejército que tuvieran diferentes instrumentos de alta potencia, donde se empezaron a observar y a estudiar estos vehículos de formas tan anómalas y tan diferentes, y también todo lo que estaba presente. También se pudieron hacer evaluaciones en el Instituto Aeronáutico, y también se hicieron estudios en los laboratorios de los Estados Unidos. Y después del cambio en el comando, donde se había empezado a hacer el estudio, se desactivó el programa. En 1977 hubo una investigación de la Fuerza Aérea que se hizo a petición de los alcaldes de los presidentes en Pará y en Marión. Se empezaron a hacer estudios y le llegó, la población empezó a ver qué era lo que estaba sucediendo. Vieron, sabían que los habían visitado vehículos extraños y que emitían luces, y que estos causaban unos efectos fisiológicos en los residentes. Por eso se eligió la ciudad de Polaris para que empezara una investigación, y esto lo dirigió un capitán que sabía y fue posible identificar por lo menos 9 formas diferentes de objetos y algunos eran tan grandes como hasta de 100 metros de longitud y luego que estaban entrando y saliendo a los ríos de la región. Y estos fueron esquemas que hicieron el ejército y se pudo ver un vehículo con una ventana y se vio cómo emitía dos rayos de luz y lo vieron diferentes residentes. Se produjeron aproximadamente 2,000 páginas de documentos, 400 fotografías, 16 horas de video, pero este proyecto fue cerrado a finales de 1977, cuando empezaron a verse los contactos y cuando toda esta información empezó a volver mucho más intensa. Y después de esta operación, en abril de 1978, el secretario de Aeronáutica, yo misma recomendó la creación de una base de datos confidencial de ovnis. En junio de 1978, el personal civil y del ejército vieron un fenómeno que se registró en una estación de radar y de telecomunicación cerca de Brasilia. Se escucharon ruidos, sombras de formas. Se vieron en la sombra, se empezaron a llegar tierras, empezaban a llegar golpes a los techos y se vieron todas estas luces. Y esto se vio en el radar. Hubo tiros de rifle que el ejército lanzó a la vegetación y que lo que pensaban iba a estar en contra o que se iba a estar dirigiendo a los ovnis. Se decidió interrumpir los disparos porque ellos tenían otra tecnología superior y no sabíamos cuál pudiera ser la reacción. En 1900, después fue invadido el espacio aéreo. Ahí también se vio la presencia de estos ovnis en instalaciones militares y todo esto empezó a ser monitoreado por la Fuerza Aérea. Y aquí se trató de hacer una identificación de todos estos y se reportó que se estaban anticipando maniobras y que esto iba a causar interferencias con los equipos y que las cosas sí podían acelerarse a velocidades rapidísimas y también se podían quedar estáticos y tenían la capacidad de moverse de esta manera. Y vimos ahí en ese caso 13 objetos. Los controladores del ejército también reportaron la existencia de una nave que iba acompañada de una grande que iba acompañada de naves más pequeñas. También se organizó una conferencia de prensa para poder confirmar la veracidad del incidente y para decir que no había explicación alguna para este fenómeno observado. En enero de 1996, hubo diferentes testigos de diferentes regiones que reportaron haber visto formas que tenían ojos rojos y se hizo un movimiento muy intenso en la ciudad de Hostos y el único documento oficial público fue una investigación del ejército brasileño dirigido por un coronel que dijo que la luz que se veía nada más había sido una persona que tenía una discapacidad y que era bien conocida. Para poder explicar todo lo que ha sucedido, una autoridad dijo que hubo personas, pero esto coincidía con lo que se había descrito como criaturas diferentes, pero no, eran personas que habían llegado al hospital recientemente. Hay otros testigos quienes decidieron empezar a hablar de estos casos. Marcos Pérez, una autoridad, dijo que durante este caso habían visto y cómo se había acercado una nave sin autorización a una pista cercana y se mandaron helicópteros a este lugar. El coronel que se encarga del transporte negó esta participación. Sin embargo, sí dijo que la presencia de otros seres de otros planetas siempre se ha registrado y que va a seguirse registrando esta presencia. Y también se declaró después de un silencio de casi 30 años que él había visto el video de esta persona de la que se había hablado que estaba alrededor del hospital. En el año 2008 El caso más fantástico fue que tuvimos el testimonio directo de personas del ejército, donde esta fue información que fue publicada. La población local habló de lo que habían visto, de avistamientos. Esto en Minera Jais y también oficiales de la policía y del ejército habían seguido dos haces de luz y lo habían seguido y estos estaban en las plantaciones de caña de azúcar. Vieron que había visto un efecto psicológico durante y después del evento y también la policía vio no nada más estas luces sino formas esféricas y que además parecían como estructuras de hierro y cómo habían cambiado la dirección y que se movían como pelotas de ping pong en el cielo. En el año 2020, una autoridad del gobierno brasileño dijo que además había un documento de más de 120 páginas en un documento y videos que mostraban estas formas esféricas y estas luces, y esto lo vieron personas indígenas en la selva. Y todos estos fenómenos han sido estudiados por los antropólogos. También se vio el caso de la persona que había llegado al hospital. Esta persona había perdido la conciencia después de los disparos, de 5 disparos que había recibido. Para concluir, la mayoría de los casos que se ven están registrados en los archivos nacionales de Brasil y estos contienen miles de páginas de documentos que tienen que ver con este fenómeno. Sin embargo, sabemos que los documentos que tienen más fuerza, lo que tiene videos, por ejemplo, nunca han sido divulgados, y los documentos que no pertenecen a la Fuerza Aérea y que están cuidados por algunas leyes. Hay algunos otros que no se mandan a los archivos nacionales por la falta de legislación, que es la que no permite la existencia de un repositorio centralizado al respecto. Ahorita este fenómeno está sucediendo hoy y yo acabo de ver un caso en Brasil de personas que estuvieron viendo la luz. Hubo mutilaciones de animales. Esta es una de las cosas que estamos viendo. Vemos todo el enfoque de la seguridad. No tenemos explicación, no tenemos cómo tranquilizar a la gente. Es necesario complementar todo esto y libre de estigmas sociales y religiosos. Por eso le hago la misma recomendación a los amigos mexicanos. Lo que se hizo en el Senado de Brasil, es necesario tener una autoridad de investigación que esté compuesta de personas del ejército y civiles, donde se centralice la compilación y el análisis de los datos de este fenómeno y que sea información transparente para la población. También recomiendo que se haga una reunión con representantes de México, Brasil y otros países para hablar del tema y que tenga el potencial, porque todo esto tiene el potencial de transformar nuestra humanidad. Muchas gracias, y me gustaría decirles que de los documentos emitidos por el gobierno brasileño, todos estos están disponibles.
It is really very intense what has happened in Brazil. The amount of encounters, contacts with other beings, is truly overwhelming. The case of Varginha, one of the most important beings, were recovered, videos were recorded. We still hope that the military who have them in their possession in Brazil will make them known, because a clear demonstration was given that all this is absolutely true. There is strong evidence in Brazil that would demonstrate the reality of this phenomenon without any doubt. Now I'm going to introduce, I want to tell you that we have a surprise in store, and I ask you to be a little patient because we're going to get there. But first we are going to listen to Michel Valiant, who is a former advisor. He was an advisor to JPAN. The JPAN is one of the most prestigious organizations in the world because it is composed only of scientists, military, people very close to the government, and they investigate this phenomenon as experts. And without a doubt, having him here is also a real gift. Michel Valiant.
Honorable Sergio Guterres Luna, les membres du Congrès, mesdames et messieurs.
Sí, caballero, yo soy consultor independiente especializado en la búsqueda e investigaciones sobre los fenómenos anormales no identificados. Y estoy feliz hoy de poder compartir con ustedes la experiencia que viví en Francia. Durante mis 16 actividades más recientes tuve la oportunidad de trabajar para el GEPAN. El GEPAN es una unidad del Centro Nacional de Estudios Espaciales francés, especializados en la investigación sobre los fenómenos aeroespaciales no identificados. Desde 2007, dentro de este organismo contribuí en diferentes tareas, lanzamiento del primer sitio gubernamental abocado a este fenómeno. Un software único en el mundo que integra una metodología para ayudar a los investigadores para poder determinar la naturaleza de las observaciones que se han reportado. En el GEPAN también colaboré con investigadores en diferentes estudios para mejor comprender la naturaleza y el origen de estos fenómenos. Al utilizar la dataciencia y la estadística, yo pude medir correlaciones estadísticas significativas junto con los riesgos ambientales. Yo quiero precisar que me fui del GEPAN en 2022, no represento al GEPAN, y al principio de año fundé una organización llamada UAP Check, cuyo objetivo es contribuir a este tema actuando a nivel educativo y cultural. Efectivamente, si esto es importante, para mí es que este tema nos ofrece acceso a las creencias personales, a los prejuicios y a la estigmatización. Y por experiencia propia observé que esto emergía principalmente por cuestiones de ignorancia. Típicamente cuando nos vemos confrontados a situaciones que se escapan a nuestra comprensión. Para reducir el peso de estos prejuicios me parece que es esencial implementar estos procesos y exponerlos de manera muy pragmática. Por eso yo voy a abordar dos aspectos vinculados al estudio de estos fenómenos fundamentales. El proceso de investigación, por un lado, y el proceso de búsqueda y estudio. Vinculados, son muy diferentes y no deberían confundirse, aunque estén muy estrechamente vinculados. Un buen inspector es un buen generalista y un buen investigador es un buen especialista. En primer lugar, abordemos el proceso de investigación. Nos va a permitir tratar cada uno de los aspectos de los fenómenos o el fenómeno observado y evaluarlos de manera contradictoria. En el GEPAN, sin entrar en un análisis técnico, podría parecerse a lo que observaríamos en el mundo de la justicia. El investigador tiene que actuar como juez que busca un veredicto equilibrado, es decir, funcionar con cargos y descargos. Y siempre es raro que las organizaciones que se interesen pongan un método preciso, y es más raro que estas organizaciones los detalles de esta índole que podamos obtener los mismos resultados de la encuesta, quien quiera que sea el investigador, pero vemos que ninguna organización en el mundo funciona de la misma manera, y lo que es la puerta abierta para las críticas y los prejuicios. El trabajo científico con respecto a los fenómenos no identificados requiere que podamos utilizar los resultados de las encuestas y de las investigaciones de la misma manera en el mundo entero y de la misma manera que los procedimientos y los tratamientos hayan sido admitidos a nivel internacional, y ese no es el caso actualmente. El primer reflejo es imponer un método de funcionamiento único para las organizaciones que se interesan en los fenómenos inexplicables e inexplicados. Parecería una utopía. Muchas organizaciones ya implementaron sus propios procesos de tratamiento de estos eventos. Además, las agencias que tratan la seguridad aérea o la defensa militar solamente no desean que se intervenga en sus actividades. Hay, sin embargo, una solución: crear una federación internacional que agrupe a las organizaciones impactadas de lejos o de cerca por estos fenómenos, que sean del gobierno o no, trabajarían dentro de este colectivo para elaborar estándares y certificaciones necesarias para las investigaciones de fenómenos inexplicados. Y es muy posible inspirarse sobre el funcionamiento de organismos de certificación como el ISO, ¿Qué pasa con el proceso de investigación científico y por qué es tan difícil llevar a cabo investigaciones sobre los fenómenos inexplicados? Por ejemplo, supongamos que tienen una base de datos de fenómenos inexplicados como el del Japón. El Japón estudia, analiza, pero no hace investigación. Sin embargo, dispone de esta base y alguien debería utilizarla. ¿Pero quién? ¿Científicos? Sí, muy bien, pero ¿cuáles científicos? Y esto podrían ser físicos. Tal vez, pero no nada más ellos, porque no podrían reconocer un fenómeno como una inducción de falsos recuerdos o episodios alucinatorios. Entonces, podrían ser psicólogos, ¿no? Tal vez, pero no nada más. Porque, por otro lado, no podrían reconocer fenómenos físicos como los plasmas, como los de plasma, y al contrario, podrían tomar estos plasmas como alucinación. Entonces ya comprendieron, estas interpretaciones van a tener el mismo problema con cada disciplina científica. El hecho es que no existe una disciplina científica actualmente única que pueda tratar la inmensa diversidad de estos fenómenos. Y es por esta razón que ningún científico justamente va a poder apoderarse de la base del Japón. Y me parece indispensable hoy en día crear una nueva ciencia, una ciencia que se llamaría la ciencia de lo desconocido, que se tenga que ver con todo fenómeno, que no solamente tenga un solo ámbito de investigación porque es demasiado extraño o que tenga varias explicaciones científicas, estudiar los fenómenos desconocidos, pero hay que crear un proceso nuevo e interdisciplinario que atraiga a investigadores de ámbitos diferentes para que se reúnan alrededor de una misma mesa, para que trabajen conjuntamente dentro de una misma unidad científica. Es decir, que no se queden en sus unidades de origen, los psicólogos por un lado, los físicos por otro, los astrofísicos por otro. No, esta ciencia que pueda cuestionarse sobre lo desconocido para cuestionar nuestra capacidad como seres humanos de trabajar conjuntamente, nuestra capacidad para generar una inteligencia conectiva, conectándonos unos con otros. Es un proceso similar al que volvemos a ver en el mundo de la innovación. Bien, entonces exploramos las posibilidades que se ofrecen, indicios débiles. Albert Einstein decía que la imaginación es más importante que el conocimiento. Entonces jamás hay que dejar de imaginar que los indicios de hoy en día nos podrán llevar a los conocimientos del mañana. Y para concluir, sabemos ya que los asuntos de seguridad aérea vinculado con los eventos aeroespaciales inexplicados son muy importantes. Me concentro ahora en otro aspecto fundamental. Estos fenómenos son la firma de inteligencias no humanas que están en actividad en nuestro planeta. Bueno, esta pregunta ya se hizo aquí, no se puede ignorar. Nuestros progresos tecnológicos constantes nos acercan a esta posibilidad de detectar señales inteligentes, ya sea dentro de nuestra propia atmósfera o más allá de nuestra atmósfera. Es decir, la probabilidad de demostrar la existencia de inteligencias no humanas, y esto va aumentando de año tras año. Esta posibilidad marcaría el inicio de una nueva era para la humanidad, un momento que nos veríamos confrontados a un choque cultural inmenso y a una disrupción sin precedentes. El asunto fundamental que se plantea ahora es la siguiente: los gobiernos deben esperar de manera pasiva que este choque cultural llegue y explote. Tenemos dos opciones frente a nosotros. Podemos decidir cerrar los ojos, perdernos en debates estériles y seguir divididos acerca de interpretaciones que se contradicen. Sí, es decir, no implementando ningún proceso de análisis serio. O bien, la segunda alternativa, podemos mostrarle al mundo que estamos listos para trabajar conjuntamente a pesar de nuestras diferencias, escuchar a los testigos, ayudar a los científicos y a fomentar el diálogo intercultural. México, rico por sus culturas, sus civilizaciones, México es muy apto para desempeñar una función de mediador y de conector. Al ejecutar y comprender los intereses que se presentan actualmente, nos podemos anticipar al futuro, un futuro donde la humanidad se conectará con otras civilizaciones, pero pragmáticamente, esperando ese momento, hay que conocer a los hombres en este trabajo de investigación y comprensión en un espíritu de apertura, humildad y colaboración. Es nuestra decisión que podría definir nuestro futuro y nuestro destino.
Well, now let's go to a point more extraordinary. David Grush, the intelligence officer who declared before the congressmen of the United States that his country was in possession of biological remains of entities that, and that he knew where they were, that he told the congressmen. So far, the Pentagon has not agreed to release this information and allow congressmen to witness these biological remains. Here today, we are going to present two beings that were recovered in Peru in a diatom mine. They are dried bodies found between the cities of Palpa and Nazca in 2017, which have been deeply investigated both by investigative journalists and scientists. Today here, they are going to make known some of their extraordinary conclusions. I want to call, first of all, the researcher Joyce Mantilla, who has investigated this topic from the first moment. Have they already been discovered? We are going to discover them at this moment, those bodies that, according to the scientists who are going to declare it here, are non-human beings, that are not part of our terrestrial evolution, and that after disappearing, there is no subsequent evolution. According to the National Autonomous University of Mexico, that carried out the carbon-14 analysis, these beings are around 1,000 years old. That is, these are not beings that were recovered from ships or that they are crashes, but rather they are beings that were buried in diatomaceous mines, diatomaceous earth. The diatom is fossilized algae that is 17 million years old. It is phytoplankton that was abundant at that time, and when it disappeared, it fossilized. And the diatomea has extraordinary characteristics. It dries out the bodies. It does not allow the growth of bacteria nor fungi. Therefore, it allowed these dried bodies to be preserved for 1,000 years. These are not mummies. These are bodies that are whole, complete, that have not been manipulated inside. And they have a series of elements that make them truly extraordinary. Please, Joyce Mantilla, if you want to stop by here, please go ahead. The surprise is over there, at the other end of the room. However, I want to take the opportunity to thank this illustrious table of guests, to Congressman Sergio Gutierrez Luna, who has brought us here, And obviously, I understand the position of my colleagues who at this moment are obviously attracted by the surprise that we have brought them. I'm usually in their position. Now, due to circumstances, I am here. Very good evening to all of you. Very good afternoon. It depends on the audience that is following us through social media and the Congress broadcast. There's a lot of information and the time is short, so if you allow me, let's go to the point. With your permission. We have heard here the valuable reports and testimonies about the existence of non-human technologies in the skies. It is no longer debated whether they are real or not. It is my turn to demonstrate to them with science and evidence that non-human intelligences are not only something contemporary. Number 2, please. They have been here for hundreds of years and at least 20. Thank you. And at least 20 of their corpses were unearthed informally. You have to understand then you will have time to be able to get closer to take the shots that corresponds. You have to understand a little bit about that's how incisive and heavy we are. Sometimes those of us who make images, those of us who do journalism, it's our job. The public needs to know, but you will have the opportunity to see the images calmly. You will be able to go to the place. You don't have to get off there right now. Later, you will be able to get off. Move around when they finish. It's almost there. There are 2 more presentations left, and you're going to dedicate themselves to making the images. Well, as I said, these bodies were unearthed, and at least 20 of their corpses were found informally, almost intact, near the enigmatic Nazca lines. Just a parenthesis, I am not a ufologist. Since the 90s, I trained in the ranks of television journalism. I have covered political events, I have been a parliamentary reporter, an aeronautical correspondent, and a war zone correspondent. Sorry. In principle, I invite you not to trust everything I say. Let's go to the facts and the evidence. That is what matters. What is important is what we can demonstrate. My journalistic investigation, number 5, my journalistic investigation is based on academic and scientific studies carried out in several countries and with the support of some of the most prestigious laboratories in the world. Analysis has been carried out by biologists, forensic and criminalistic experts, geneticists, biophysicists, radiologists, microsurgeons, and even metallurgical engineers. You will say, why a metallurgist according to the bodies? You are about to know. This is an extraordinary discovery because they are dried bodies that belong to 2 species unknown to science, and I affirm this with how resounding a DNA test can be in the analysis that can be done now with the science that we have developed. They are 2 species that have never been seen. The genetic information has already been uploaded to the internet to a scientific repository, and people with the capacity to analyze that information can see it freely. They may or may not confirm what we say here. In July 2017, before we presented the discovery together with Jaime, Maussan, and Gaia Television, during a press conference in Lima, some archaeologists and other professionals who call themselves from the scientific community denounced a fraud, the manufacture of bodies with remains of other animals, and told the public that some artisans mutilated the hands and feet and cut out the eye sockets of a real mummy in a workshop to give it an alien appearance. The press obviously believed in them. Why? Because those who said these are the most important references in archaeology. Scientists high in their careers were the ones who said this. But you know, how many analyses, how many samples were taken? How many studies did these scientists and this scientific community do on these bodies before making their diagnosis? 0. Nothing. They didn't even go to meet them. They have been at the ICA University for 4 years, and they have not gone to meet them. It is as if the bodies are here at the UNAM, and they are proud and say that it is false, and that they do not go to the UNAM to truly find out what it is about. On the screen you can see, on the right side, some of the analysis that these bodies have undergone, and on the other side, in the empty column, the work of the bone holders, which has basically been to make a diagnosis by looking at what they see on their cell phone or on their computer, peacefully, sitting at home or in their offices. Well, some bureaucrats from the Ministry of Culture of my country joined these unsubstantiated claims. Here would be the Ministry of Culture, and they were also joined by a list of communicators who used their media and channels as a trench to attack this case as a fraud. And they showed some ritual crafts like the ones you see there, ones with a blank X. They are small pieces of 15 to 20 centimeters that accompany the burial. But they are ritual pieces. We have found a ritual purpose for them as a tribute that the ancestors who buried these bodies wanted to replicate. They wanted to show what they saw. The image on the right is one of those 4 they have there. In other words, because there are several of them, here are 2 copies. They wanted to confuse the public opinion and look at the difference. The one above they were popularly called Nazca mummies, but as Jaime rightly says, they are desiccated bodies. And the one below is a ritual piece. It is even smaller in size. Look at their face, look at their foot, look at their characteristics. They have wanted to imitate them. They have a very important value on a cultural level. But they are not desiccated bodies that are being investigated with staffs and professors from several universities. They are crafts, yes, but they have an importance that will be studied later. These members of the scientific community also pointed out that the discovery came from an illegal excavation, that there were no archaeologists present, and it's true, there were no archaeologists present. However, this has been the case for many of the important finds in the archaeology of the country and in many countries as well. At first, they were illegal excavations or they were casual, and then they found professional archaeologists to do their work. This case is no exception. However, its informal origin does not make the bodies fake or the product of fraud. If today we have the opportunity to present this case, it is thanks to the fact that in 2017, the Incari Institute of Cusco was the first to announce a strange discovery. Then he assured the production company Tercer Milenio of Mexico and Gaia.com of the United States, who came to my country with specialists in various subjects to do the first analysis and expert reports that confirmed the antiquity and authenticity of the bodies. Since 2019, the National University of Ica of Peru received some of these corpses for safekeeping and to carry out a study to put an end to the controversy. An investigation team was formed, and look what happens. The professors who are in this investigation are being harassed by the Ministry of Culture with legal processes that seek to accuse them of anything to prevent the investigation in some way so that this does not come out, that this is not known. Visited, obviously, by mid-level officials of the Ministry of Culture. It's a regrettable entity. The truth is very questionable that in just 6 years, think about that in only 6 years the Ministry of Culture has had 18 ministers of culture, one after another. They fall and fall due to political issues and many involved in issues of corruption and inability to manage. Despite everything, the interest of some professors from 2 other universities in my country was caught, and they agreed, and their professors went to Ica, which is what any researcher does, and they went there to do their own work, an experimental study. The researchers analyzed a corpse that they have seen here, measuring 60 centimeters, which we provisionally labeled as a humanoid reptile due to its characteristics. They took cells from the head, trunk, and extremities, and the laboratory analysis showed that it was an entire body. All cells belong to the same body. Professors from one of the most important universities in my country say so. I'm not saying it. Then the metallurgical engineers, here comes what I told you, took samples of the metal implant that they have in their chest. Some have a breast implant. And along with the high purity copper, which is more or less 85%, is typical pre-Columbian, but they also found a metal that is the most dense, expensive, and scarce on the planet. It is called osmium, and today it is used in satellites, the shuttles that have gone to space, and in telecommunications. But these beings were almost a millennium ahead of humans and used it on their skin. One of the metallurgical engineers speculated that the only thing it could be used for, he imagines it, could have been for location. But we are talking about beings that have walked for at least 1,100 years, so it is very strange. It could also have biomedical purposes. Anyway, finally, the professors also very delicately pierced one of the wombs that was in gestation, as strange as it may sound. They took samples of this ovoid shape that you see there in the images, and the spectrometry confirmed that it was organical material typical of an egg. The scientific community said that they were stones, that they were metal balls that had been put into a doll to make it look something exotic. The university scientists told him clearly that was not the case. The real tomography, if you accompany me in the images, press play in the center. That's the great thing we have in technology. We can remove layers and layers from one of those formations, ovoids, that will allow us to see what's inside. This is not a stone, ladies and gentlemen. We are removing the layers, and what is left is what everything tells us is an embryo a few weeks into gestation. This is a recreation that was made with direct tomography made by the Incare Institute, and the images were also achieved with the work of the St. Petersburg University of Russia. We are not talking about a group of vaqueros who have done something like that, or a group of grave diggers. Let's go to the next image so that you can see that this is not a coincidence. 2 years later in Peru, in my country, the University of Ica replicated the topographic analysis in another body that was also in gestation, and together with an expert, they achieved these images. You also press play in the center, please. What you see on the left is from the side, and on the right, the part from top to bottom, while it runs on the tomograph. There you can see in the upper part what would be his little head, in the middle part some little arms that extend forward, and the entire lower part is the rest of the body that is information. It is the first time that a forum of this level has seen these images. They can compare the images of a human fetus and a human fetus like the one they have there in the display case. This is surprising because we are not talking about fiction, we are talking about science. We are seeing them. These beings have been coexisting at the time of carbon-14 dating with the Nazca culture, but this would not have been possible to see if it were not for the preservation method practiced on those bodies, which has kept them with their organs internal. The white coverage and characteristic color they have cannot be seen in any other form of preservation in the world. The white topping is a combination of diatomaceous earth, Jaime already mentioned it, and fossilized algae, in addition to an extremely toxic and lethal chemical compound, which is not natural. It must be manufactured and produced. There they have the formula is CdLCl12. It is cadmium chloride. It is a deadly substance to sum up. This, combined with diatomaceous earth, is what gives that color characteristic to the so-called Nazca mummies, these desiccated bodies. They were also about 1,800 years ahead of our civilization because we did not know them until 200 years ago. Our research has led us to find the anatomy of these tridactyl beings, because they have 3 fingers, in almost all pre-Columbian cultures, in their ceramic on looms, cave paintings, and even the petroglyph, which are tens of thousands of years old. They are not simple anthropomorphic mythological figures imagined by our ancestors. They were real. You are seeing their remains here. Whether in Peru, Chile, and Cuba, let's look at the following images, please. in Mexico, in the United States, in Armenia, in Iran, in almost all places in the world, there are these types of images where beings with large heads, very large eyes, and only 3 fingers on their hands and feet are shown. The cultural impact of this discovery will have many repercussions. Look at that doll, for example. That doll will be exhibited in a museum at the Lima Art Museum, and it has 3 fingers too, like the mummies that we have found, like in the desiccated bodies that we have found. It can't be a coincidence. Let's go to the next one, please. As I said, the cultural impact of this discovery will have medium and long-term repercussions on archaeology, history, the evolution of species, and even religions. However, it is already reaching the new generations. Let's go with the penultimate one, please. Look at that image. It's recent. It went viral in my country last week. This is the science work of a child from Cusco, who is reproducing the physical characteristics of the Nazca mummies. Children are already accessing this information despite all attempts to deny, revile, and outlaw it. I take this opportunity to make a call with all due respect to scientists, real professors throughout the world. Have doubts. I invite you, as I did in principle with this case. I am a journalist, incredulous like most of you are here, but I approached too. Because of the doubts I had, I approached it. I didn't say it's fake and I continued doing something else. I approached the case because I thought there was something very suspicious there, and it wasn't suspicious. It was extraordinary. That is why I invite you to start, if you like, with the hypothesis that everything is false, but come to investigate, to draw your own conclusions. This treasure appeared in Peru, but it is a legacy for all humanity. Let's not let it fall into the wrong hands. Thanks to the million people and disseminators who on their social media as well as in multiple languages and platforms through streaming have contributed to ensuring that this knowledge is not buried. That this knowledge reaches this venue today is a product of tireless collective work. Human intelligences, remember, are not a recent phenomenon. They are an ancient reality. Thank you for this opportunity. Excuse me. Without a doubt, extraordinary. I want to thank Gaia.com, since you must imagine that the research was extraordinarily expensive. Well, I'm not going to say dozens, but many trips to Peru were made for an entire team. The DNA, which you are going to hear from an expert in its analysis, cost more than $50,000 to make, 1 million pesos. And more than 1 year of Zen4Gen laboratories from Canada, one of the best in the world. Therefore, there is no error in reading the DNA. And I want to tell you that it is the queen of all tests. That is, if DNA is showing us that they are not human beings and that there is nothing in the world that resembles this, we should take it that way. They are not human beings. We don't want to call them extraterrestrials because we don't know. But these beings that were obviously intelligent, that our ancestors lived, and that will change the history of humanity because that is what is going to happen. Perhaps that is why anthropologists and archaeologists oppose this, because history must be rewritten and consider many things that we have not thought about. Now I want to introduce Dr. José Salce Benítez, a true scientific eminence. He is here personally representing himself. However, he has been working in the Mexican Navy for almost 30 years. He is one of the most important scientists of this organization. He is now the director of the Scientific Institute for Health of the Secretary of the Navy and has many specialties, and at some point he was the director of the Forensic Medical Service of the Navy. and he is a super qualified man to make the statements that are going to be at this moment. Please, Dr. José Salce. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Deputy Sergio Gutiérrez Luna and Mr. Jaime Maussan for the privilege of coinciding at this time. It is an honor for me to be able to address in such a high tribune to present the results of my analysis derived from the study of the anatomy of these non-human bodies. As a forensic doctor, in collaboration with biologist José de la Cruz Ríos, and based on the results of various scientific evidence, such as X-rays, computed tomography, three-dimensional reconstructions, macroscopic and microscopic analysis, histology, carbon-14, forensic anthropology, comparative anatomy, and DNA analysis, which is the queen of evidence in forensic science for comparison studies, I can affirm that these corpses are not related to human beings. For this purpose, I will begin with a description of the pictures we'll be watching. These are corpses of approximately 60 centimeters long, covered in a white powder that, through electronic microscopy, we identified as diatom powder, which allows the desiccation of bodies, as well as the absence of generation of fungal, bacteria, and cadaveric fauna. The presence of this dust allows a perfect preservation by desiccation of these corpses, causing a natural conservation process over time, which we were able to calculate by applying the carbon-14 test, which pointed out and gave an average of 1,000 years old. This makes the place of the discovery of these corpses an ideal place for their conservation and preservation by whoever deposited in this place in Peru. Entering the topic of anatomy, we can see that they have a humanoid structure consisting of a head, trunk, abdomen, and limbs, which end in tridactylous hands and feet. The bone structure of the entire skeleton shows us a perfect harmony and agreement between the joints. The end part of each bone fits perfectly with the following bone, and we also observe wear by the movement of the specimen's own biomechanics, being very resistant bones, but also very light, strong but light, such as the birds. The head is an element of particular interest, since it's large in proportions compared to the body. However, it is a pneumatized skull, that is, with spaces that allow it to be very light but rigid and resistant, with a large intracranial cavity, which showed that it was a container for very large cerebral or neurological material. Likewise, we see that the spaces in the eye orbits are very large in size, which would allow a very wide stereoscopic vision for the specimen. It also has very small nostrils and an oral cavity that, due to its jaw joint and absence of teeth, allows us to determine that its feeding was by swallowing and not by chewing. The neck, in turn, is a long structure that joins the head in the middle floor of the skull, which is a rarity that does not occur in primate species, since the union is in the posterior floor and not in the middle floor, through the foramen magnum, which is usually circular or ovoid in shape, being something unique since in these species it is rectangular and cubic in shape. This is consistent with the 4 or 5 cervical vertebrae, which are small in their bone thickness, but have a very wide intervertebral disc, which makes it possible for this neck to be retractable like that of turtles. In the thorax, we find a fork very similar to that of birds, which allows the shoulder joints to continue and have very wide mobility capabilities. In the thorax, we find that the ribs are complete and continuous, totally circular until they join with the vertebral column. They have a very small space between them, the number being between 14 and 16. In the abdomen, we can show the presence of 3 eggs, which, in the abdominal cavity, thanks to the tomography, we were able to show at a millimeter level that there are oviducts with the presence of millimeter eggs. This means that they were in a continuous gestation process, in addition to 100% corroboration that they are biological and organic, since the process of replication or reproduction through these eggs and their development in the oviduct would be impossible to falsify. We can also observe, thanks to the tomography, the traces of muscles, tendons, ligaments, and blood vessels, as well as possible organs or organelles that will have to be defined in subsequent studies. Coming to the extremities, we can point out that there is a complete harmony and agreement between the joints and the wear and tear of the biomechanics of the specimen, which end in tridactyl hands and feet with 5 phalanges. This would allow them not to use the thumb as a position, but to use their 3 fingers in wrapping manner to hold things. Here is one of the most outstanding and relevant peculiarities, that they do not have carpal and tarsal bones. The phalanges are direct to the bones of the arm and forearm, in addition to the fact that they end in a kind of mongial bed for the nail, and that when observed under microscopes, we find fingerprints. This would be impossible to replicate. These fingerprints are of particular interest, since most of the specimens on this planet have wavy or circular fingerprints, and the fingerprints of these specimens are completely straight and linear horizontally. Another peculiarity is that some of these bodies have metal implants that are perfectly attached within the skin and towards the surface, performing a very impressive biofunctional function. These implants are the alloy of various metals, among which osmium and cadmium stand out, which are currently used for satellite telecommunications. Finally, I will point out that DNA analysis, after having been compared with more than 1 million registered species, we found that there is a significant difference between what is known and these bodies. These studies were carried out in various high-level institutions, both national and international, and the results gave evidence that 70% of the genetic material coincides with what is known. But there is a difference of 30%. What is the relevance of this? Well, if the human being, compared to primates, has a differentiation of less than 5%, and compared to bacteria, it has a differentiation of less than 15%, this would indicate that the difference found of more than 30% is something totally outside the parameter and what was expected, is foreign to what has been described and known until now by human beings. These studies and results are published and available to anyone who likes to analyze them or give them continuity. We accept that there is still much to discover, and we are open to the scientific community and the world, helping to join forces to define what we are facing and how far we can go, as a result of a collaboration in a scientific and academic study. In conclusion, and for all of the above, we can say that these bodies are from a non-human species, which has irrefutable differences with what is described in the biology and taxonomy of the Darwinian species evolution tree, without a common or traceable predecessor, or without an as yet described descent and evolution. I can affirm that these bodies are real, 100% organic and biological, that at the time they had life and are irrefutable evidence in themselves. We are facing the paradigm of describing a new species or the opportunity to accept that there has been contact with other non-human beings that were drawn and pointed out in the past in various cultures throughout the world, such as Peru, Egypt, and Mexico, and that today we can accept its existence among and with us. Thank you so much. Extraordinary presentation by Dr. Jose Salce Benitez. I think it leaves no room for doubt. The most important thing here is that we are dealing with physical evidence. Some years ago, maybe some remember it, 8 years ago, I presented evidence from a photograph of what I think is an extraterrestrial being. But how can we prove with a photograph that it is? Years later, God gave me the opportunity to find this physical evidence, and I repeat, it is physical. There it is. For those who want to investigate it, and if you want to put it again, those who are listening to us at any place in the world want to access the place where all the DNA is found, which took more than 1 year to have it. You will find it there. Any scientist who wants to do his own reading can do so, and we will reach the same conclusions that Dr. Ricardo Rangel surely reached. An expert geneticist who will now present to us the results of his research with DNA. Go ahead, Ricardo. How are you? Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Chamber of Deputies, honorable members of the Presidium, ladies, gentlemen, members of the press, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your presence. And basically, continuing with the analysis of the biological entities referred to a moment ago by Dr. Salce, I have come here freely and voluntarily to give my interpretation of the studies carried out on the tissue samples obtained from one of the specimens, as commented by the journalist Joyce Mantilla. There are several bodies that have been rescued. One of them is one called Victoria, from which several tissue samples were obtained and underwent cleaning and extraction of DNA, that is, of this genetic material from the acid deoxyribonucleic, to later carry out a DNA sequencing process. This in order to be able to identify the organism to which the specimen in question could be related. As these are samples of ancient biological tissue, which could be verified through carbon-14 tests, it was to be expected that the molecules that protect the genetic information of this individual could be altered, degraded, or partially destroyed. This is due to the effect of stress caused by multiple environmental variables. In addition, it must also be considered that, given that the specimen was found in a cave where it could have been in direct contact with microorganisms, insects, pollen, or any other living organism, the possibility that a DNA sample isolated from the tissues mentioned above could be contaminated is quite high. Also, in the interpretation of the results, it must be taken into account that the people who found manipulated the specimen, since they did not do so with the necessary precautions to avoid contaminating it with saliva, respiratory droplets, or any other tissue of human origin. That said, a pilot study was carried out to verify the state of the DNA molecules and then carry out a sequencing process. The extraction technique and its subsequent running in an agarose gel confirmed the existence of both degraded DNA and non-degraded small DNA molecules with the possibility of carrying out a sequencing process. The technique of choice for sequencing ancient DNA, like that of the sample in question, is the massive next-generation sequencing technique, which was carried out on an Illumina brand sequencer. This technology allows the sequencing of millions of fragments obtained from the problem DNA in a short time. The results of the sequencing were as follows. From the specimen identified as 0002, which is basically a sample of the neck bone, 561,665,320 reading sequences were obtained, while from the other sample of muscle tissue, from the sample identified as 0004, which is muscle tissue from the hip, 500,700,245 reading sequences were obtained. A reading sequence is made up of DNA fragments that are 150 nucleotides long. These sequences were then uploaded to the platform called Sequence Reading Archive, or SRA. This mega-data analysis tool is free and is part of the National Center for Biotechnology Information of the National Library of Medicine of the United States of America. This tool allows a comparison of all the reading sequences obtained from each biological sample in question and compares it with all the sequences of known genomes in the gene bank, adding up to today more than 700,000 readings, basically complete or partially incomplete sequences, but at least today there are 700,000 samples of these living beings that inhabit the Earth. Although it is estimated that there are more than 7 million species on our planet, up to this moment, at least one organism of all the existing ataxa of known living beings on the planet has already been sequenced. Therefore, with these 7,000 genomes with which the comparison of the reads obtained is carried out, provides us with a representative and significant result. The SRA tool mentioned above provided us with the following results. From the neck tissue sample, from the neck bone identified as 0002, 72.07% of reading sequences and 27.93% of the reading sequences obtained were identified. They do not coincide with the genomes of living beings known so far. Of that 72%, 70% belongs to contaminating DNA sequences of Homo sapiens, and the remaining percentage belongs to viruses and bacteria that also contaminated the sample. Very interestingly, the muscle tissue of the hip, it was possible to identify 36.2% of reading sequences, but very interestingly, 63.2% of the reading sequences do not match the genomes of living beings known to date. Of that 36.28 that were identified, all turned out to be contaminating DNA from contemporary viruses, bacteria, plants, failing to identify the genome of any mammal, including humans. Therefore, it is concluded that the two ancient biological samples contaminating DNA that could have been acquired during the manipulation of the specimen or over time by organisms that surrounded it or by the people themselves who manipulated the specimen. Of the sample identified as 0004, it showed the highest number of reads of unidentified sequences, about 316 million reads. This high percentage of readings, not identified with the living organisms that we currently know, should be the focus of future research to try to define the identity of the organism in question. There is a greater than 90% probability that this organism is not related to humans. there is a greater than 50% probability that this organism is not related to the living beings known to date on our planet. Genetic studies must also be carried out on all the specimens known so far in order to be able to sequence their entire genome. Until this moment, it is not possible to identify the specimen in question. And all the gene sequences, as already mentioned in the study, are public and can be accessed freely. It would be important to promote a multidisciplinary scientific committee to continue the study of anomalous geological entities as well as the study of UAPs. Thank you for your attention. What you have seen here tonight seems extraordinary to me. It is the first time that it is presented in such a way, and I believe that there is a clear demonstration that we are faced with non-human specimens, that they have no relationship with any other species in our world, and that all possibilities are open for any institution scientific can investigate them, and that any DNA specialist can access the cloud on the internet who can download the information and study it for themselves. That is physical evidence. That is, we can touch it, we can analyze it. There it is. It was what many scientists wanted. There they are. We have them. Now it's up to you to decide and have the courage to do it. I want to ask Deputy Sergio Gutiérrez Luna to please close this event. It has been an intense afternoon. We have listened to people of all kinds, fellow pilots, Mexican aviators, air traffic controllers, congressmen from Eastern Japan, Brazil, France, people who commented that they have had personal experiences, testimonies from Peruvian researchers, Jaime Maussan himself, too, scientists, doctors. Regarding DNA, they have spoken to us about the subject. As I mentioned from the beginning, I believe that this is the space to listen to all voices, all opinions. A topic that has had global relevance in recent times due to the events in the United States, and now here in the Chamber of Deputies, we can debate and deliberate about this. I also thank our fellow deputies who accompanied us, who were interested in this topic. We are left with reflections, with concerns, and with the route of continuing to talk about this. I said at first we hope that it is the first of several events, and it also leaves us with legislative reflection on the need or not to make proposals to modify the laws. I think we are at a point where it is always worthwhile to publicly and openly air opinions on all topics. This, the People's House, will always be open to everyone. Thank you so much.